Chapter 1101. High up in the sky, two figures confronted each other. Nyetan, I don't know how you offended that lord, but the person he asked me to kill, I must kill. A terrifying aura rose behind Ingdu, and his eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. When he mentioned that lord, his face slightly trembled. Obviously, that person's identity was extremely terrifying. Nyetian looked at Ingdu, his expression so calm that it made people's hearts palpitate. He smiled faintly and said, I really want to know, who is the person who asked you to kill me? Do you think I'm a fool? The corner of Ingdu's mouth twitched, and he said with a strange smile, Even if you die, I will let you die a wrongful death. As a sinister voice fell, Ingdu's entire body's aura burst out, and a pair of huge wings condensed from black yuan energy appeared behind him. It was hundreds of meters long, as if he was carrying a black mountain on his back. Dark clouds rolled, giving off an extremely oppressive aura. What a terrifying aura! When the crowd saw this scene, even though they were tens of thousands of meters away, they could still feel the terrifying aura rolling down, and their chests felt abnormally stifled. Nyetian, Mo Rushi and Cher looked at the scene in the sky, and their faces couldn't help but become nervous and worried. Ha! On the other side, Wang Chongfeng laughed wildly and said, Lord of the castle, release the black eagle wings. This brat definitely won't be able to withstand a single move. Yes, Lord of the castle is mighty. The people of the lone eagle castle on the side all smiled coldly, as if they could already see the tragic scene of Nyetian being killed in a single move. Nyetian, obediently accept your death. High up in the sky, Ingdu let out a shrill cry, and with a flap of his wings, his figure was extremely fast, like a black mountain rolling towards Nyetian. The sudden burst of aura caused the entire world to shake, and the surging aura caused people's hearts to tremble. AO Sword Art. AO Sword's 3 absolutes. Sword Heart's End of Moon. Nyetian's face was as calm as water, and there was no fear in his eyes. Instead, a surging killing intent surged, and the battle intent in his body became violent. The first move was one of the AO Sword Art's 3 absolutes. Sword Heart's End of Moon. Boom! Surging sword intent erupted like the sea, and sword light blossomed in the void, shooting out a sword light that was 10,000 meters long, illuminating the sky. At that moment, Eagle Venom's wings closed, and a black light shot out, turning into a giant black eagle. It was over 1,000 meters long, and it let out a shrill cry. Its figure was so fast that it left a black trail in the air, and it was like a dark cloud as it descended. Boom! The mighty sword's shadow collided with the giant black eagle. The void suddenly trembled, and a muffled explosion sounded out. A surging wave of chi spread out in all directions. This level of collision was already very destructive. However, the space of the Heaven Realm's divine realm was much more stable than that of the Sumeru world, so it was impossible for spatial cracks to appear. Chi. The two forces collided with each other, creating an ear-piercing sound in the air. Clouds of airwaves surged in the air and engulfed the two people. On the ground, countless pairs of eyes stared at the sky without blinking, afraid that they would miss any crucial scene. That boy withstood Lord Castle Lord attack head-on. He's absolutely dead for sure. I reckon that there's not even dregs left now. The lone Eagle Castle's people could not see Nyetian and Eagle Venom's figures. They could only see clouds of air billows rolling endlessly as they said with sinister smiles one after another. Nyetian, you mustn't have anything happen to you. On the other side, Mo Rushi's brows furrowed, her beautiful eyes flickering, her heart leaping to her throat. Cher was even more nervous, her small hands pulling Mo Rushi tightly, her eyes almost turning moist. Mr. Nyetian is fine. Suddenly, Lan Ting opened his mouth and said, his expression incomparably shocked. Clearly, he was appalled to the extreme. He was an alchemist, his mental strength and perception were strong. Even though his gaze could not penetrate the dark clouds in the air, he could clearly sense that Nyetian's aura was still there. Furthermore, It was very powerful, not the slightest bit weaker than eagle venom. Lanting was unable to imagine how a first-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist could contend with a third-level Heavenly Emperor head-on. Heavenly Emperor realm. The difference of 2 levels was indescribable. Nietion's strength was horrifying until it made one's hair stand on end. After a long time, the air billows in the air gradually dissipated. 2 figures appeared above the void. The 2 people both had surging auras, but they were both injured on their bodies. They stared fixedly at each other, wishing to dice the other party into pieces. Not dead. When the Lone Eagle Castle's people saw that Nietion's figure was still there and it did not seem to have suffered too severe injuries, they immediately cried out in shock, their expressions all dumbfounded. Eagle Venom was known as Tiny Solitary City's #1 powerhouse. The terror of his combat strength was indisputable. Nietion was actually able to contend with him head-on. This was also too bizarre. Everyone's gazes focused on Nietion. That figure with fluttering silver hair seemed to be like a sharp sword, lying in the void, sharp to the extreme, tearing everything apart. Nietion. In front of Nietion, a bloody wound appeared on the hawk poison's body, but it quickly healed. However, his face was so grim that it seemed as if it would drip blood. He hadn't expected that not only would he not be able to kill Nietion in their first exchange, he wouldn't even be able to gain the slightest advantage. It seemed that he was even more injured than Nietion. Looks like this castle lord underestimated you too much. Eagle Venom opened his mouth coldly, his gaze as gloomy as water. All the killing intent on his body condensed in his substance, enveloping over towards Nietion, but was unable to make the latter's eyes have any change in the least bit. Nietion was like a piece of stabilizing rock in a violent storm. Even if you have perilous waves, you can forget about touching me in the slightest too. The price of underestimating me is death. Nietion responded coldly. When the final word death fell, all the fighting intent in his body rose up. His entire figure instantly moved, rushing over towards Eagle Venom. Rumble. Sword absolute heaven / stabbed out in the void. A majestic and vast sword intent rolled out, crushing over like a thunderbolt. Amen. Eagle Venom immediately felt a terrifying killing intent hit him head-on, making his gaze involuntarily tighten as he cried out in surprise. It seemed like Nietion's strength was actually much stronger than before. It was very strange. Nietion's person was in midair, an enormous sword shadow rolling and roaring like a giant dragon, rumbling over towards Eagle Venom. Right in that instant when confronting Eagle Venom head-on just now, Nietion suddenly felt that the essence meridians within his body became berserk. It was as if he was going to advance to 2nd level Heavenly Emperor right away. He advanced to 1st level Heavenly Emperor when he was in the spatial realm. For several months afterward, he had been cultivating nonstop all along. Arriving at the Heaven Realm's divine realm at this time, heaven and earth spiritual energy suddenly became rich, stimulating his essence meridians. It was not strange that he could feel the opportunity for his strength to advance. Coupled with the head-on confrontation with Eagle Venom, it even stimulated his essence meridians, letting his strength have the opportunity to advance. Heavenly Emperor Realm. Advancing each level was very difficult. It was as difficult as assaulting a major realm. Die for me. But right at this time, a piercingly cold intent flashed across Eagle Venom's eyes. The aura on his entire body actually skyrocketed once more. Thick black essence energy appeared around him, suffusing in midair. Chapter 1102. High up in the sky. When Eagle Poison saw Nietion take the initiative to attack, he immediately released the giant spirit true body without the slightest hesitation. Black Feather Profound Eagle. The instant the black giant eagle appeared, a vast and unparalleled colossal force suffused out. The entire stretch of heaven and earth suddenly trembled. Immediately, dark clouds surged. Heaven and earth changed colors. The surrounding space seemed to be covered by a layer of black curtain, becoming dusky. Giant spirit true body. When the crowd saw the black giant eagle above the void, their gazes trembled violently, their bodies trembling nonstop. That kind of berserk aura was too ferocious, spreading out tens of thousands of meters away, making people feel a chill in their hearts. What a shameless eagle poison! Dealing with a first-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist, he actually used the giant spirit true body. When Lan Ting saw this scene, his gaze also trembled, and he could not help cursing angrily. A martial artist's giant spirit true body was closely connected with a martial artist's martial body. Under normal circumstances, it would not be used easily, because if the giant spirit true body was injured, the martial artist's main body would be injured too. But after reaching Heavenly Emperor realm, the giant spirit true body already grew to a near-complete state and could unleash a terrifying effect. Furthermore, it was not easy to get injured. Hence, martial artists at this realm would not have too many misgivings and could use the giant spirit true body at will. Especially 9th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists, their giant spirit true body grew to the extreme state. Especially spirit beast martial artists, releasing the giant spirit true body, the most terrifying could reach the level of several thousand meters. A casual move could destroy mountains and rivers. The might of the destructive power was unimaginable. Eagle Poison, using the giant spirit true body at this time, indicated that he truly had the heart to kill Nie Tian. After this battle, only one person could survive. Either it was Eagle Poison or Nie Tian. Rumble. The next instant, Eagle Poison released the giant spirit true body. That enormous sword image in the air descended with a loud bang, directly bombarding onto the black feather profound eagle. Immediately, a deafening loud bang erupted in the air. Countless sword lights shot out as if directly exploding. Oh, the black feather profound eagle's enormous body trembled slightly, immediately letting out a shrill cry to the sky, shrill and ear-piercing. An astonishing sword slammed onto the black feather profound eagle, directly blasting out a 100-meter-wide bloody hole. Immediately, blood gushed out. The air pervaded with this layer of extremely bloody aura. But the black-feathered profound eagle's recovery ability was extremely strong. In a blink of an eye, the bloody hole automatically healed, extremely bizarre. Nie Tian took a few steps back. His eyes trembled as he stared at the black-feathered mystical eagle. He was shocked. This feathered beast's defense is indeed strong. Although it was injured, it was able to recover in an instant. It seems like this battle will not be easy. The giant spirit true body of a Heavenly Emperor realm martial artist was truly terrifying. Nie Tian, is this all you've got? Eagle Poison's eyes were like poison as he stared fixedly at Nie Tian. His aura was wild and violent, and a terrifying killing intent surged around him. Although the previous attack was powerful, it was still not enough to hurt the black-feathered hawk. Nie Tianling sneered, but didn't say anything. At a certain instant, his gaze looked at the void in the distance. In a holographic projection of a surrounding space, in that stretch of seemingly empty space, a black silhouette appeared indistinctly. Looks like there's more than one person who wants to kill me. Luo Chenhun is really level-headed, sending even stronger people over. Nie Tian smiled cold inwardly, his expression becoming much more cautious. The enemy that he was facing at this moment was not just Eagle Poison alone. Outside the void in the distance, there was still a figure existing, watching everything cold the entire time, but not making a move. Very clearly, this person was waiting. If Eagle Poison killed Nie Tian, that would naturally be for the best. If Eagle Poison was killed by Nie Tian, then he would have to take action personally. Nie Tian was constantly on guard against this person, being very cautious in his heart. What he was worried about at this time was not himself, but Mo Rushi and Cher. If he wanted to leave, even if that person was a 5th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist, he might not be able to stop him too. But Mo Rushi and Cher could not. It was impossible for Nie Tian to abandon them and flee for his life alone. Nie Tian, die for me. At this time, Eagle Poison's furious roar sounded out once more. The black feather hawk gave a sharp cry, black wings spreading out, a full 2,000 meters in size. The sky immediately became even darker, as if covered by a black curtain. The black-feathered hawk's wings shook violently, its speed suddenly accelerating, fast to the extreme. Several black phantoms actually appeared in the air, as if there were several black-feathered hawks existing at the same time. Such fast speed. When the crowd saw this scene, their eyes flickered, their hearts trembling, the shock in their hearts indescribable. Everyone was certain that this attack, Nietian would definitely not be able to block it and would definitely die tragically on the spot. Flowing killing seal open. Nietian looked at that giant hawk in the sky. The corners of his mouth murmured softly, his hands forming a seal. The surrounding space swayed slightly. The momentum of heaven and earth immediately changed. Endless heaven and earth essence energy gathered together, collapsing toward Nietian. What a bizarre seal! When Lan Ting saw this scene, his gaze trembled incessantly. He did not expect that Nietian could actually use this kind of terrifying seal, directly reversing the momentum of heaven and earth. This kind of means was simply heaven-defying. Breakthrough, accompanied by heaven and earth spiritual energy pouring in continuously. Nietian suddenly roared angrily. Following that, the aura surging all over his body suddenly erupted. A vast and mighty force surged out in the void. Invisible air billows assailed heaven and earth, producing terrifying undulations. My God! At the same time, Lan Ting suddenly detected something and cried out strangely, his voice becoming incomparably sharp. He actually detected that Nietian's strength broke through, breaking through to second-level Heavenly Emperor, breaking through realms in battle. Nietian was simply too crazy. Nietian's terror was unimaginable. The other people's gazes also changed at this moment. Although they did not know what happened, they could clearly feel that Nietian's aura became even stronger. In the void, Nietian stood towering like a sharp sword, a killing sword. In that instant just now, his strength advanced, advancing to second-level Heavenly Emperor. The reason why he used the God of War 3 seals was to make use of the power of the seal to change the momentum of heaven and earth, letting himself advance to second-level Heavenly Emperor. While above in the distant sky, the black-feather profound hawk suffered the impact of the air billows. Its enormous body paused slightly. But immediately after, it charged over even more frenziedly. Hawk Poison detected Nietian's strength advancing and could not help panicking. He knew that this was his last chance. He had to kill in one blow. Rumble. Right at this moment, the horrifying power around Nietian instantly condensed. A terrifying hand seal appeared, vast and mighty like a mountain, vigorous like the sea, bursting out with a loud bang, assaulting toward the black-feather profound hawk. Roar! The black-feather profound hawk gave a sharp cry, its wings flapping even more fiercely. The feathers on its body all stood up, akin to one swift and fierce steel blade after another. The black-feather profound hawk was like a ball of black flames, charging straight down. Rumble! The next instant, the flowing man-seal collided with the black-feather profound hawk with a loud bang. In an instant, heaven and earth trembled, the void trembled. Two surges of power tangled together, glaring light spreading out nonstop. Frenzied doomsday counterattack. But right at this time, Nietian's figure charged over directly, completely disregarding that terrifying impact force, directly stabbing a sword out. Chapter 11:03. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the air, two terrifying forces collided, penetrated, and strangled each other. An ear-piercing sound rang through the air, and the terrifying forces raged. At this moment, Nietian's figure rushed forward, completely ignoring the terrifying forces in the air. Nietian activated the ultimate fire Scarlet Heaven battle armor. The violent impact bombarded the battle armor, and the blood in his body surged, as if he was about to lose control. Seeing that Nyation was charging straight at him, Hawk Venom's eyes trembled violently, and he cursed, "Lunatic!" Everyone on the ground was stunned by Nyation's actions. No one had expected Nyation to be so brave and reckless. Boom! In the next moment, the huge shadow of the sword landed on the huge body of the black-feathered hawk. The terrifying sword was like countless sharp blades, bombarding the huge body of the black-feathered hawk. Crack, crack, crack. Suddenly, there was a crisp tearing sound in the air. The wings of the black-feathered hawk were torn apart, and blood sprayed everywhere, forming a bloody curtain in the air. The black-feathered hawk and the drifting man's seal collided. Originally, they were evenly matched, but Nyation added another attack, and the situation was completely changed. Oh, woo! The black-feathered hawk couldn't bear the pain of its wings being torn apart, and it cried out in pain. Its body suddenly retreated, but it was hit by an even more terrifying attack. The huge body of the black-feathered hawk was suddenly filled with violent sword will, and its body was torn into pieces. The bloody scene was hard to look at. Then Hawk Venom felt the terrifying force crazily colliding in his body. Wounds appeared all over his body, and the heart-wrenching pain made him cry out in pain. The bloody and glaring scene made everyone's heart tremble, and they all gasped. No one had expected that Nyation would use such an extreme method to injure Hawk Venom. Hawk Venom was ruthless enough, but unfortunately, Nyation was even more ruthless. In the air, the huge shadow of the sword exploded with terrifying power, and with a loud bang, it pierced through the black-feathered hawk's sword. Endless amounts of blood sprinkled down from the sky, as if it was raining blood. The eagle poison is over. Nyation's expression was firm. His eyes were cold and emotionless. No, eagle venom felt a cold, killing intent envelop his body. He howled in pain, his eyes filled with despair. Unfortunately, it was too late. It was impossible for Nyation to show mercy at this time. There was no victor in this battle, only life and death. Break! In the air, a cold voice rang out. After that, there was an explosion. The sword will inside the black-feathered hawk's body exploded. Suddenly, the sky was filled with blood. It was extremely tragic. Along with the black-feathered hawk's explosion, Ingdu's body shattered and turned into a pool of blood. Flesh and blood flew in the void and was directly engulfed by the sword will, turning into blood light and dissipating. The solitary Eagle Fort's Fort Master, a third-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist, died just like this, dying tragically to the extreme. Nyation's figure stood above the void, but the killing intent all over his body became stronger and stronger. An even wilder fighting intent was released, making his entire person look like a sharp sword that split heaven and earth. The crowd on the ground was all stunned, their faces stiff and petrified, not knowing how to express the shock in their hearts. Nyation was too strong to actually rely on sword intent to kill Eagle Venom. The cruelty of his methods made people tremble in fear. That sword earlier, Nyation was injured too. He forcefully withstood the terrifying impact force and charged over. It was because his martial body was even stronger than Eagle Venom's. His body had the 9-star dragon vein, coupled with the support of hundreds of billions of star power. The might of his martial body far surpassed Eagle Venom's. Although that degree of impact force could injure him, it was not fatal. The current Nyation, the wounds all over his body automatically healed, but his eyes stared at the void in the distance, his face exuding a somber coldness. Still not coming out? Nyation looked at that void and said coldly. Perhaps the person hiding in the void was stunned for a moment, but he did not make a move just now. Who is he talking to? At this time, the crowd finally reacted. Their faces were filled with astonishment. They did not know who Nyation was talking to. There was clearly no one in the void in front of him. However, in the next second, a cold and evil laugh came from the empty space. It was extremely arrogant. Stinking brat, your strength is indeed strange. Not only did you kill the useless hawk's venom, but you were also able to detect my presence. It seems like I have underestimated you. The evil voice resounded in the void, filled with an extremely evil aura, and at the same time, full of contempt. It seemed that this person did not take Niation seriously. As the voice fell, a black figure appeared in the void. His figure was slender, his eyes cold, and his body emitted an extremely terrifying aura, as if his entire body was condensed from killing intent. What a cold person! When the crowd saw that figure from tens of thousands of meters away, they actually felt a bone-chilling coldness spread in their hearts, as if the entire world was filled with a suffocating chill. Niation looked at that person, his eyes narrowed slightly. Feeling the other party's killing intent, two words appeared in his mind. Assassin. Assassin. Only an assassin could have such a powerful killing intent, and to be able to conceal and control it so perfectly. If it were not for Niation's holographic divine runes, with his level 92 mental energy, it would have been difficult to discover this person's existence. Such a powerful killing intent, such a frightening concealment method, only an assassin could do it. At this time, Niation's eyes flickered slightly, noticing a yellow mark on the black-clothed cultivator's body. It was a skeletal claw. Immediately, his expression changed, and a name suddenly appeared in his mind. Shura Sect. Shura Sect, the most terrifying assassin organization in the Heaven Realm, was known as the #1 assassin organization in the Heaven Realm. Its position in the Heaven Realm was like the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion in the 3,000 Lesser Worlds. In the rumors, the Shura Sect Sectmaster was a peak Heavenly Emperor martial artist. It was just that this person was extremely mysterious and had never appeared before. Niation had once exchanged blows with an Azura Sect's deputy sect master, and he annihilated the latter. He hated the Azura Sect very much. He had once said that as long as the Azura Sect's people dared to appear in the Day-Night Divine Realm, he would kill one on sight. He seriously did not expect that returning to the Heaven Realm's Divine Realm again, he actually ran into an Azura Sect assassin. You're a member of the Azura Sect. Surprise flashed past in Niation's eyes. Then he calmed down and directly pointed out the arrival's identity. His divine sense swept over the arrival, his gaze trembling slightly. The other party was actually a 4th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist. 4th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist. This was considered not a weak powerhouse in the entire Heaven Realm, because 5th-level Heavenly Emperor was a watershed in the Heavenly Emperor realm. Only martial artists with outstanding talent could reach the strength of 5th-level Heavenly Emperor. Niation took a look. This was a lean old man, his age above 500 years old. He should have stopped at 4th-level Heavenly Emperor strength for more than 100 years. If he did not have any fortuitous encounters, his strength in this lifetime would stop at 5th-level Heavenly Emperor. Chapter 1104. The Azura's Gate assassin stared coldly at Niation, and he couldn't help but be surprised. Although he had the Azura's Gate mark on him, not many people recognized it, because those who had seen an Azura's Gate assassin before were all dead. Niation recognized the Azura's Gate mark. Could it be that he had fought with an Azura's Gate assassin and survived? Azura's Gate. When the crowd heard Niation's words, their eyes flickered uncontrollably, and their eyes were filled with great fear. The Azura's Gate's ferocious reputation in the Heaven world made everyone tremble in fear. There was even a rumor that as long as you could invite the Azura's Gate Patriarch, you could even kill the 9 emperors of the Heaven world. Of course, this was just an exaggeration. No matter how strong the Azura's Gate Patriarch was, he was at most on the same level as the 9 emperors of the Heaven world. It was basically impossible for him to kill the 9 emperors. In the eyes of many, the Azura's Gate was an organization that only existed in legends. Now that they saw an Azura's Gate assassin with their own eyes, one could imagine the shock in their hearts. At this moment, everyone understood why this person gave off an inexplicable chill the moment he appeared. He was an Azura's Gate assassin. President Lon, are Azura's Gate assassins very powerful? At this time, Emo Rushi's beautiful eyes flickered, and she asked softly. She was very worried about Niation, but she couldn't make a move. If she made a move now, not only would she not be able to help Tian, but she would also become his burden. Very powerful. Lan Ting's eyes trembled, and he didn't explain too much to Mo Rushi. The more he explained to Mo Rushi, the more worried she would be, so it was better not to say anything. Mo Rushi's beautiful eyes narrowed, and the worry on her face deepened. I really didn't expect you to recognize the Azura's gate mark. Up in the void, the Azura's surprise disappeared from the assassin's face, replaced by a cold smile. It seems that my mission this time has some value. Tian's reaction was very calm, and he said with a faint smile, "You are just a yellow-grayed Azura. Your position in the Azura's gate must be very low." Tian knew that the Azura's gate assassins were divided into 4 levels: heaven, earth, black, and yellow. The insignia on the black-clothed man's body was yellow, indicating that he was the lowest-level assassin in Azura's gate, a yellow-grayed Azura. The strength of an Azura gate's yellow rank Azura was already 4th-level Heavenly Emperor. How formidable a heaven-rank Azura's strength was could be imagined. From this, it could be seen that the Shura was indeed the #1 assassin organization in the heaven realm. Being mocked by Tian, the assassin's eyes flashed with anger, and his wrinkled face couldn't help but tremble. Tian's guess was correct. This person was a yellow Azura. His name was Wang Zhuwei, and he was over 500 years old. More importantly, Tian's words inadvertently touched Wang Zhuwei's sore spot. Wang Zhuwei had joined the Shura's gate when he was 400 years old, and it had been more than 100 years since then. Unfortunately, he was still a yellow-grayed Azura, which really annoyed him. If he could not advance to black rank Azura, he would not be able to obtain high-grade spirit pills or the opportunity to cultivate in high-grade spirit arrays, and he would also be unable to break through to 5th-level Heavenly Emperor. When he accepted the assassination mission this time, his superiors told him that as long as he could kill Tian, he could advance to black rank Azura. When Wang Zhuwei learned that the person he wanted to kill was a 1st-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist from the spatial world, he was virtually wildly ecstatic. He could not even be bothered to take action personally, but let the solitary Eagle Castle's castle lord take action. The result was that he did not expect that Hawksbane died tragically in Tian's hands. Furthermore, Tian's strength even advanced a level inexplicably. If he had long known that it would be like this, Wang Zhuwei would have taken action personally, and it would not have been such a troublesome matter either. Hawksbane had precisely the support of an Azura assassin. That was why he dared to challenge the Bright Sea Trade Association. "Stinking brat, if I kill you, I can become a black rank Azura." Wang Zhuwei calmed down for a while, his eyes flickering with sinister killing intent. Killing intent suddenly released from his entire body. The tremendous killing intent was akin to an invisible giant hand, directly enveloping over. The void trembled slightly, space suddenly tightening. What terrifying killing intent! Wang Zhuwei's entire body released killing intent. The crowd felt the sharp killing intent several tens of thousands of meters away, their hearts trembling wildly. Such terrifying killing intent! Azura sect assassins were indeed terrifying to the extreme. Tian's entire body was wrapped in killing intent. His gaze could not help turning dark too. But the resolute look on his face did not change. "Stinking brat, just one move, and I'll take your life." Suddenly, Wang Zhuwei gave a fierce cry. A slender and long sharp sword appeared in his hand, directly stabbing out. An ear-piercing howl immediately sounded out in the air, as if space was directly being torn apart. Following that horrifying voice coming out, the void trembled slightly. A sword image that looked unremarkable whistled out, akin to a sharp blade, tearing through the air, assaulting toward Tian. Such powerful strength! Tian's gaze turned intense slightly, the shock in his heart not small. Wang Zhuwei's sword did not look to have any power, but it actually contained a very horrifying power. This was the terror of a top assassin, giving you a very weak feeling, but actually they were so strong that it made one's hair stand on end. Heavenly Wood Shield. Feeling the terrifying momentum, Neptune slightly frowned, not daring to be careless. With a thought, the starry soul steel in his body sensed it, and endless power of the stars gushed out. Suddenly, the sky was filled with sparkling stars, illuminating the sky. Seeing this scene, Wang Jiwei slightly frowned and immediately revealed a more terrifying killing intent in his eyes. The sword intent in his body was even more violent than before. In an instant, the surging power of the stars around Niet Tian turned into a starry shield, protecting him in the center. Boom! In the next moment, Wang Jiwei stabbed out with his sword, and the strange sword image bombarded on the starry shield. There was a loud explosion in the air, and then a dazzling crack appeared on the starry shield. Crack! 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 Immediately, in the center of the crack, a fierce sword intent bloomed, and the starry shield could not withstand the impact of the sword intent, and rapidly broke. Inside the heavenly wood shield, Nietion's eyes flashed with a strange light, but he did not panic. Bang! In just a blink of an eye, the heavenly wood shield could no longer withstand the impact of the sword intent and shattered with a loud bang. Die! Seeing this scene, the corners of Wang Jiwei's mouth twitched, squeezing out a savage smile on his face. Stabbing out with his sword once more, his entire person swooping over, his entire body circulating with berserk killing intent and sword intent. Although Wang Jiwei was an assassin, his sword Dao realm was not weak, already at the soul of the sword realm, the same as Nietion. Swift and fierce sword intent coupled with thick killing intent. Under this sword, it was sufficient to annihilate 4th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists of the same level as him. Nietion only had 2nd-level Heavenly Emperor strength. Furthermore, he had just advanced. How could he possibly receive this life-threatening sword? Be careful! On the ground, when Mo Rushi saw this scene, she could not help crying out, her beautiful eyes flickering with terror, her entire person's nerves taut to the extreme. The others also stared without blinking, their hearts leaping to their throats. Chapter 1105. In the void, Wang Jiwei's fatal sword pressed down, piercing killing intent. This sword, he already harbored the heart to kill, killing in one blow. The heavenly wood shield around Nietion was broken. What his eyes revealed was not fear and panic, but determination and killing intent. The heavenly wood shield was a rank 8 stellar soul, and it was actually shattered by Wang Jiwei's one sword. The might of his strength was shocking, but these were all within Nietion's expectations. One could even say that the heavenly wood shield being broken was his battle plan. Wang Jiwei was a 4th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist, the strongest opponent that Nietion encountered since reincarnating, not one of. Furthermore, this was an assassin. His combat power was even stronger than ordinary 4th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists. If Nietion only used a rank 8 stellar soul to resist the other party's fatal blow, that would really be too foolish. Although rank 8 stellar souls were strong, wanting to resist the attack of a 4th-level Deva, being martial artist was still too forceful. The instant the heavenly wood shield was broken, Nietion had long made all preparations. He wanted to give Wang Jiwei a chance to get close to kill him. He was waiting for the latter to pounce over. Rumble. Just as Wang Jiwei swooped down, Nietion's eyes quivered slightly. Immediately, a boundless mental deterrence was released, as if an invisible mighty force covered, blotting out the skies and covering the earth, vast and mighty. Wang Jiwei suddenly sensed something amiss and cried out in shock, but it was already too late. He suddenly felt a tremendous force collide above his soul. Following that, his entire body swayed, his gaze becoming sluggish, his mind instantly falling into a trance. In an instant, the sword intent and killing intent around Wang Jiwei all disappeared, and he floated in the air like a fool. What's going on? Everyone originally felt the suffocating pressure in their hearts, but it suddenly disappeared. Their gazes involuntarily flickered, not knowing what happened. This is... Lanting's perception was very strong. Suddenly, he sensed a mental undulation coming out of the space. Following that, his expression changed with a swoosh, for words emerged in his mind. Mental attack. He was very certain that Nietian used a mental attack. Furthermore, this mental force was very strong, surpassing imagination. Nietian, he's not an 8th-ranked alchemist. In the blink of an eye, Lanting was completely enlightened. His entire person became silly and his heart trembled. He is a rank 9 alchemist. Oh my God! Lanting only felt a rumble in his head, and his eyes became blurry. He had always thought that Nietian was an 8th-tier alchemy master, but the enormous mental force attack earlier made him understand that Nietian's mental force was above 90th level. He was a 9th-tier alchemy master. 9th-ranked alchemists were not rare in the Heaven Realm. There were at least a few dozen of them, or even 100 of them. But only when one's mental power reaches 95 level and above would they have the qualifications to be the 7 great elders of the Alchemist Association. But how old was Nietian? He was only 20 years old. A 20-year-old 9th-ranked alchemist. This was far beyond Lanting's understanding of the alchemy Tao. His whole person was stunned in an instant. Success. But at this time, the Nietian in the void just smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth pulling up a cold, killing intent. The heavenly would shield being broken, luring Wang Jue to approach. All of this was within his expectations. It was in order to let him launch absolute tremor better. Wang Jue was a 4th-level heavenly emperor martial artist. Furthermore, he was an assassin. The tenacity of his heart was far from what ordinary people could compare to. Nietian must create an opportunity for himself to make a move and achieve a one-hit kill. Morning star daybreak. The next instant, Nietian muttered. A starlight ball appeared in his hand, and he directly smacked a palm out, rumbling over toward Wang Jue. He only had one chance to make a move. He must do it without fail. The other party was a 4th-level heavenly emperor martial artist. The terror of his martial body was inconceivable. Nietian did not want to stab out with one sword and fail to kill him. Previously, when fighting with hawk poison, Nietian detected Wang Jiwei's existence and was already secretly condensing the power of stars. This attack was virtually the most horrifying attack that he could condense. This was a fatal blow, a one-hit kill. The starlight ball speed was extremely fast and actually drew out a light pillar in the air, assaulting Wang Jue. Amen. Wang Jiwei's reaction was extremely fast. Absolute tremor only made his mind fall into a momentary lapse. In that instant when the starlight ball arrived in front of him, he actually woke up and gave a cry of surprise. He wanted to resist, but it was already too late. All the essence energy in his body had yet to be released in time when the starlight ball directly exploded. Endless glaring white light shot out in all directions akin to the sun. A dazzling and resplendent light appeared in the sky. The colors were varied, magnificent and magnificent, simply dreamy. However, under this dreamy beauty, there was the most frightening, killing intent. Nietian's figure stood in the void, a pair of cold eyes locked onto Wang Jue. He clearly saw that one streak of starlight after another bombarded onto Wang Jiwei's body and was actually unable to directly break through the latter's physical body. Wang Jiwei's expression was pained. His body started twisting. Although he was resisting with all his might, the starlight was too swift and fierce. Furthermore, it was boundless and endless. Finally, a hysterical scream sounded. Wang Jiwei's body could no longer withstand the impact of the starlight. The flesh and blood all over his body were sliced apart, submerged, swallowed, and melted inch by inch. In an instant, he turned into a bloody light and dissipated in the void. Boom! In the next instant, the power of the morning star break was released and impacted in all directions. The void shook slightly, and then the huge power disappeared into the void. The glaring light disappeared instantly, and it was as if nothing had happened in the void. However, the difference was that there was only one figure left in the void, and that was Nietian. Wang Jue had already been killed by Nietian, and not even his bones were left. Perhaps at the last moment before his death, Wang Jiwei did not expect that he would actually die in the hands of Nietian. The crowd looked at the silver-haired figure in the void, and their eyes revealed fear, panic, fear, and reverence. All the emotions merged together, and their gazes seemed very complicated. No one would have thought that the person who survived this battle was actually Nietian. Nietian, what a terrifying person. At this time, Lan Ting already calmed down slightly. He recalled the battle between Nietian and Wang Jiwei just now and abruptly came to a realization. Everything was Nietian's stratagem. It was Nietian who let Wang Jiwei approach him and then counterkill him. Nietian, this person, what was terrifying was not just his strength and martial Dao talent. His combat talent was similarly terrifying. The current Nietian stood in the void, but his eyes were trembling incessantly. That instant just now was too dangerous. Fortunately, he made a prompt decision and was willing to put down his hard-earned capital, directly using the Morningstar break. Otherwise, he definitely could not kill Wang Jiwei. The destructive power of the Morningstar break was even comparable to when Nietian used a taboo move. Even so, it only barely killed Wang Jiwei too. The latter's martial bodies might was seriously terrifying. Fourth-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists are indeed still terrifying. Nietian sighed lightly in his heart, the corners of his mouth curling into a faint smile. No matter what, this battle was still his victory in the end. Chapter 1106. Nietian stood in the air, puzzled. How did his whereabouts get exposed so quickly? Even if Luo Chanhun was extremely capable, it was impossible for him to know everything. Nietian had come from a nine-cold region to the East River Celestial Domain, not the Day-Night Celestial Domain. It was impossible for Luo Chanhun to find Nietian's whereabouts. The Heaven Domain was so vast. Finding a person was harder than finding a needle in a haystack. I know why. Just as Nietian was feeling puzzled, the Sword Elder's voice rang out in his mind. The Sword Elder continued, "Deal with the matter in front of you first. I'll tell you later." Nietian's eyes narrowed, and he nodded. His figure flashed, and he landed beside the lone Eagle Castle people. As Nietian's figure descended, his gaze, which was as cold as steel, swept across the people of the lone Eagle Castle. Everyone who came into contact with his gaze felt a bone-piercing chill. Their eyes trembled, and they could no longer stand. Nietian was too powerful. First, he killed Eagle Poison, then he killed the Azura assassins. How could the lone Eagle Castle people contend with such combat power? If Nietian wanted to, he could kill all of them in an instant. The lone Eagle Castle people looked at Nietian in fear, their gazes dazed. People of the lone Eagle Castle, listen up. Everyone cripple their own Yuan spirit source meridians. Nietian's gaze swept across them as he spoke coldly. There was no sympathy in his eyes. These people all had blood on their hands. There was no need to show mercy. Moreover, the lone Eagle Castle Lord was related to the Azura sect assassins. The lone Eagle Castle was definitely not a clean power. When everyone heard Nietian's words, their gazes trembled, and they couldn't help but gulp. Nietian was simply too arrogant. He directly told the lone Eagle Castle people to cripple their own Yuan spirit source meridians. This was Lonely City, the territory of the lone Eagle Castle. The lone Eagle Castle people looked at Nietian. When they felt the cold, killing intent from him, their expressions stiffened. "I'm crippled." Wang Changfeng was the first to step forward. His energy trembled, and the sound of his meridians shattering could be heard. His entire body trembled, and blood sprayed out of his mouth as he slumped to the ground, paralyzed. People from the lone Eagle Castle gaped in astonishment when they saw that. Wang Changfeng was lone Eagle Castle's third elder. No matter what, he also had second-level Heavenly Emperor strength. He was actually so worried and did not even have the courage to resist. However, at this moment, Nietian took a step forward and stared coldly at Wang Changfeng. His lips curled into a cold smile as he said, "Wang Changfeng, I said that they can preserve their lives by destroying their own Yuan Ling Yuan meridians, but you can't. You? Hearing Nye Tian's words, Wang Chongfeng's pupils contracted, and his face turned as pale as a piece of paper. Nye Tian only gave him a chance to say one word. In the next moment, a sword will swept across the sky, and Wang Chongfeng's head fell to the ground. He died on the spot. The Lone Eagle Castle's people directly froze, looking at the corpse on the ground blankly. The fear in their hearts showed on their faces. Nye Tian was too vicious. Even if Wang Chongfeng destroyed his own Yuan Ling Yuan meridians, he could not save his life. What? Still not making a move? Nye Tianling turned around coldly and smiled coldly, revealing killing intent. Immediately, the Lone Eagle Castle's people reacted. All hardened their hearts and destroyed their own Yuan Ling. After a moment, the several dozen Lone Eagle Castle martial artists all fell to the ground. Scram, Nye Tianling said coldly, not willing to look at these people again. The Lone Eagle Castle's people struggled to stand up and limped away. The others looked at the backs of these people. The shock in their hearts could not be any greater. Who could have thought that after being the local tyrant of Isolated City for so long, the Lone Eagle Castle was actually nearly completely destroyed within half a day? Without a doubt, from now on, Isolated City was no longer the Lone Eagle Castle's territory. Mr. Nye. Lan Ting looked at Nye Tian. Aside from awe, there was also fear in his eyes. He spoke in a deep and respectful tone. He could not imagine that a 20-year-old youth would have such a tenacious temperament. He really did not know what Nye Tian had experienced. President Lan, I nearly implicated you. I'm sorry. Nye Tian looked at Lan Ting, but he was surprisingly polite as he smiled faintly. What is Mr. Nye saying? It is Lan Ting who has let Mr. Nye down. Lan Ting did not expect Nye Tian to apologize to him, so he could not help but smile awkwardly. Nye Tian did not delay any longer. After confirming that Mo Rushi and Cher were fine, he returned to the Bright Sea Merchant Group. Nye Tian told Mo Rushi and Shui to rest for a while he went to a private room. Sword Elder, what's going on? In the room, Nye Tian could not wait any longer. He wanted to know how Luo Chunhan could find him so quickly. Nye Tian. The Sword Elder spoke in a deep voice, but his face was filled with worry. It's because of Mo Rushi. Rushi? Nye Tian was stunned. He immediately thought of something, and his face sank. He clenched his fists and said in a deep voice, Sage Mark. When the Sword Elder mentioned Mo Rushi, Nye Tian immediately understood that it must be the sage mark on her body that exposed their whereabouts. Yes. The Sword Elder nodded and said, the sage mark is very strange. The person who placed the mark can feel the existence of the sage mark, even if they are thousands of miles away. So I guess that it must be the person who left the sage mark on Mo Rushi's body that discovered your whereabouts. Nye Tian stood in the same place with a gloomy face and his body slightly trembling. He did not expect the sage mark to be so overbearing and have such strong senses. However, he was very curious as to who the person behind it was. Could it be that Luo Chunhan placed the sage mark on Mo Rushi? Nye Tian felt that it was impossible. He knew Luo Chunhan very well. The latter only cultivated martial arts and never dabbled in other things. It was absolutely impossible for him to have any sage mark. The person who placed the sage mark is an accomplice of Luo Chunhan. It must be this person who leaked our whereabouts to Luo Chunhan. Nye Tian thought for a moment and said in his heart. In fact, when he was in the Summer World, Nye Tian knew that Luo Chunhan must have an accomplice. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to know that Nye Tian was still alive. The news that Nye Tian was still alive could only be detected by those who were at the peak of the Sword Dao. Who leaked my whereabouts? Nye Tian was bewildered and his eyes were filled with strong killing intent. Sword Elder, do you have a way to block the perception of the sage mark? After thinking for a long time, Nye Tian was unable to determine who this person was and could only ask. No. The Sword Elder answered very simply and said, the aura of the sage mark cannot be blocked. As long as you are with Mo Rushi, Your whereabouts will always be exposed to your enemies. This, Nyetian was stunned. Listening to the Sword Elder, it seemed that he and Mo Rushi should be separated. But in this way, Mo Rushi would be in danger. How could Nyetian put Mo Rushi in danger for his own safety? Moreover, Mo Rushi and Cher must stay together, otherwise the Sage Mark would not be able to suppress it. Chapter 1107. In the room, Nyetian looked at the Sword Elder's serious face and suddenly asked about his true identity. He could not help but stare at him with a slightly embarrassed expression. In fact, he already knew that the Sword Elder was aware of something, but the latter did not ask, so he did not say anything. Now that the Sword Elder suddenly asked, it was inevitable that he felt a little awkward. Recently, the Sword Elder did not know everything that happened in Nyetian, but he could guess that Nyetian's identity was not ordinary. Without much hesitation, Nyetian told him everything that had happened in his previous life. He didn't hide anything, so that's how it is. After listening, the Sword Elder faintly smiled and said, "Although you are a reincarnated person, to be able to grow from a crippled Yuan Meridian to where you are today in just 4 or 5 years, your martial arts talent is terrifying. Among the people I have seen, you can definitely be ranked in the top 5. Nyetian faintly smiled, then slightly frowned and asked, "Sword Elder, why are you suddenly asking about this?" The Sword Elder had never mentioned it before, but now that he asked, there must be a reason. "Nyetian, since your previous identity was at the peak of the Heaven Realm, you must have trustworthy friends, right?" The Sword Elder did not answer Nyetian's question, but instead asked a question. "I have some friends." Nyetian nodded, then his eyes flashed. He immediately understood the Sword Elder's meaning and said, "You want me to send Mo Rushi and Cher to a safe place." At this time, Nyetian finally understood the Sword Elder's words. The Sword Elder suggested that Nyetian place Mo Rushi and Cher with a trustworthy person. "This is currently your best choice." The Sword Elder nodded and said, "If you continue to be with them, not only will you be in danger, but they will also be in danger. If you can first find a safe place for them, you can train in peace and quickly improve your strength." Hearing the Sword Elder's words, Nyetian was silent. His eyebrows tightly wrinkled, and his expression slowly became complicated. In fact, before coming to the Heaven Realm, Nyetian had already expected that there might be endless dangers waiting for him, but he never thought of separating from Mo Rushi and Cher. But now it seemed that he had to consider this problem. Mo Rushi had the Saint's Mark. As long as Nyetian was with her, no matter where he went, he would be found by Luo Chenhan. In this way, there would be a continuous stream of killers chasing after him. This time, it was a yellow-gray Azura. Next time, it might be a black-gray Azura, or even an earth-gray Azura. Nyetian knew that the reason why Luo Chenhan hadn't taken action himself was because he was afraid of the others, or because he didn't think Nyetian was qualified for him to take action. The matter of Nyetian still being alive, only a few people knew at present. Luo Chenhan did not wish to expose this matter. Even if more than 100 years had passed, there were bound to be many people in the Daybreak Divine Realm who supported Nyetian. If the news that Nyetian was still alive spread, the Daybreak Divine Realm would definitely be in turmoil. This was not what Luo Chenhan wanted to see. One Wang Zhuwei, Nyetian could still deal with it. But if the person who came next time was a 5th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist, with his current strength, even protecting himself would be an issue. How could he talk about protecting Mo Rushi and Cher? After pondering for a long time, Nyetian let out a long breath of turbid air. He made a decision: temporarily separate from Mo Rushi and Cher. Just as the Sword Elder said, this was currently Nyetian's best choice. Since you've already made a decision, think carefully about who is worthy of your trust next. The Sword Elder knew that Nyetian had already made a decision and said, "The person who imprinted the Sage imprint on Mo Rushi is a peak Heavenly Emperor martial artist, so you must find a trustworthy peak Heavenly Emperor martial artist. Only in this way can you guarantee their safety." Nyetian nodded solemnly, deeply feeling that way too. The person behind the sage imprint had tyrannical strength. No matter where Mo Rushi was, he could sense her existence. Hence, he must find someone who could contend with this person. Mo Qianjun, Juqiansheng. Immediately, these two people appeared in Ye Tian's mind. They were his best friends from his previous life, and they were strong enough. Although they were not one of the 9 emperors of the Heaven Realm, their strength was not inferior to the 9 emperors. Moreover, they were worthy of Nie Tian's complete trust. They were the best candidates. But in the next moment, Nie Tian frowned and murmured, Mo Qianjun is in the sealed snow region, and Juqiansheng is in the western divine region. The two of them are too far away from the eastern river divine region. If I go to find them, they will probably die halfway before I find them. The Heaven Realm's divine region was very big, and the 5 regions were separated by tens of thousands of miles. It was impossible for Nie Tian to pass through the eastern river divine region and reach the sealed snow region or the western divine region. If Mo Qianjun and Juqiansheng can't do it, who else can I find? Nie Tian pondered. He had also considered the Alchemist Guild. If the Alchemist Guild President Chen Xinwen was willing to protect Mo Rushi and share, he would definitely be able to do it. But Chen Xinwen wasn't even willing to protect Chen Jini. So why would he care about Mo Rushi and the others? Who else is in the Eastern River Divine region? Nie Tian continued to ponder. Dugu and I was indeed immortal in the Heaven Wasteland Divine region, but this person definitely couldn't do it. Not to mention the fact that Nie Tian didn't have any relationship with the latter. Nie Tian even suspected that it was Dugu and I who told Luo Chenhan that he was still alive. Perhaps, just as Nie Tian was pondering to no avail, his eyes trembled slightly, and he suddenly thought of a person, Frost Empress Mao Xianglong. Mao Xianglong is in the Eastern River Divine region. How could I forget about her? Nie Tian's face was full of joy and even a little excitement. Frost Empress Mao Xianglong was the only female empress among the 9 emperors, and she also had the innate martial veins. Nie Tian didn't have any relationship with Mao Xianglong, but he had a very good relationship with her. He felt that Mao Xianglong might help him take care of Mo Rushi and the others on account of this relationship. Mao Xianglong once had a relationship with Nie Tian's 3rd disciple, Cheng Ju, but this relationship was opposed by Mao Xianglong's father, Mao Yu. Back then, Nie Tian had personally gone to the Divine Cold Palace to look for Mao Yu, but that person was a very stubborn old man and wouldn't agree no matter what, and the two even fought. Although Nie Tian defeated Mao Yu, unfortunately, he also messed up the relationship between Mao Xianglong and Cheng Ju. Because of this matter, Nie Tian felt extremely guilty. He was too impulsive at that time. More than 100 years have passed. That old man Mao Yu should have fallen. Nie Tian frowned, and his eyes lit up. Perhaps we can find out the whereabouts of Cheng Ju from Mao Xianglong. Cheng Ju was Nie Tian's 3rd disciple, and he also had the heaven-rank high-level spiritual body, dragon sun destruction physique, and his strength was second only to the eldest disciple, Han Fei, among the 9 great disciples. However, Cheng Ju had a gentle nature and didn't like to fight with others. He was a very low-key person. Nie Tian remembered that Cheng Ju's favorite saying was, "Extreme wisdom will hurt, deep love will not last long, extreme strength will humiliate." A modest gentleman is as gentle as jade. Unfortunately, he didn't live up to this point. He was infatuated with Mao Xianglong, and it was as bright as the sun and moon. Chapter 1108. In the room, Nie Tian made a decision and was ready to leave immediately. Nie Tian, are you there? At this time, Mo Rushi's voice sounded from outside the door. Nie Tian replied. Mo Rushi entered the room, but her face was a little haggard and even dignified. She looked at Nie Tian with a strange expression, but did not speak. Rushi, what's wrong? Nie Tian saw Mo Rushi's expression and could not help but worry and asked, "Are your injuries not healed yet?" Nie Tian was worried. Mo Rushi was injured by Wang Changfeng and had not fully recovered. Mo Rushi shook her head and looked serious. She exhaled a long breath, as if she had made a big decision in her heart, and then said, Nie Tian, What happened to me? Nietion's eyes slightly narrowed. He suddenly remembered that when Mo Rushi was injured, the wound had not healed, but when Cher appeared beside her, the wound immediately healed, which made Mo Rushi suspicious. Nietion, tell her. In his sea of consciousness, the Sword Elder's low voice sounded, with a bit of helplessness. Nietion nodded slightly, and no longer hid anything. He told Mo Rushi about the Saint's Mark. After listening to it, Mo Rushi's delicate pretty face was slightly sluggish and very shocked. Nietion. After a long time, she reacted and said with a guilty look, "It's because of me that those killers appeared. It's all my fault." Nietion's heart softened. He stepped forward and held Mo Rushi in his arms. Feeling the girl's slightly trembling body, his heart was filled with anger. He secretly swore in his heart that no matter who left the Saint's Mark on Mo Rushi, as long as he knew, he must kill that person with his own hands. After a while, when Mo Rushi had calmed down a little, Nietion told her about his plan. Finally, he said, "Rushi, you must stay with Schwerer for now. Don't worry, I will definitely come find you." Mo Rushi nodded, but her eyes were already slightly moist. She knew that if she continued to stay by Nietion's side, she would only bring danger to Nietion. Right now, the best solution was for the two of them to temporarily separate. There was no time to lose. Since he had already told Mo Rushi, Nietion did not stay any longer. He directly went to find Lan Ting and told the latter that he would be leaving soon. "Mr. Nye, you're leaving now?" Lan Ting was surprised. He thought that Nietion would stay in Bright Sea Merchant Association for a few days. "Yes." Nietion nodded and said, "I want to go to Divine Cold City. I need a map of the East River Divine Realm." Lan Ting agreed and immediately summoned a map and spread it in front of Nietion. Nietion only knew that Mao Xianglong was in Divine Cold City, but he didn't know where Divine Cold City was in Dongchuan Divine Territory. Divine Cold City is so far from Lonely Little City. Nietion looked at the map and couldn't help but be surprised. Lonely Little City was at the edge of Dongchuan Divine Territory, while Divine Cold City was in the center. The two cities were at least 50,000 miles apart. "Mr. Nye, this journey will be very tiring. I suggest that you go to Marshal Liang City first and find a few strong mercenaries to protect you." Lan Ting seemed to have guessed something and said to Nietion. Lan Ting didn't know how Nietion provoked the Shura's Gate's assassins, but with Nietion's strength, it was almost impossible to escort Mo Rushi and Cher to Divine Cold City under the Shura's Gate's pursuit. Marshal Liang City? Nietion's eyes narrowed. There was a big city near Lonely Little City. It was Marshal Liang City. He suddenly remembered that Zhu Yin and the others were in Marshal Liang City. Yes. Lan Ting nodded and pointed at Marshal Liang City. Nieton, Marshal Liang City is the largest mercenary city in Dongchuan Divine Territory. As long as you can afford it, you can even find 5th-level Heavenly Emperors to be your guards. Mercenary City. Hearing this name, Nietion's gaze couldn't help but tremble slightly. A look of joy appeared on his face. Mercenaries, as the name suggested, were hired guards. For the sake of obtaining high-grade spirit pills, martial arts, etc., some cultivators were willing to be hired as guards for others. Good. I'll go to Marshal Liang City first. Nietion thought about how he still had a few heaven-ranked martial arts manuals and a few Tier 9 spirit pills. If Marshal Liang City really had very strong mercenaries, he could hire them as guards. At the very least, they could protect Mo Rushi and Cher. President Lan, is there a Zhu family in Marshal Liang City? Nietion asked when he suddenly thought of the Zhu Yin sisters. Marshal Liang City's Zhu family. Lan Ting's gaze trembled slightly. Then he laughed and said, "Mr. Nye probably doesn't know, right? Marshal Liang City is the Zhu family's territory. Those mercenaries are under the Zhu family's control. Speaking of which, the Zhu family's family head, Zhu Tianhua, is just a 5th-level Heavenly Emperor. It's really strange that he can control Marshal Liang City. Maybe the Zhu family has some faction behind them." As expected, Nietion could not help frowning. He already vaguely guessed that the Zhu family's faction might be in Marshal Yang City. It was just that he did not expect that the Zhu family was actually the controller of Marshal Yang City. President Lan, many thanks. We'll leave now. Tian did not waste any more words. He put away the map and prepared to leave. He did not want to wait for the Azura Sect's assassins to catch up. Outside the Bright Sea Trade Association's hall, Lan Ting looked at the backs of Tian's group of three. His gaze became complicated. He muttered, Lord Tian, I hope you can reach Divine Cold City safely. Lan Ting could see that as long as Tian did not die, he would definitely become a big shot that would shock the entire Heaven Domain. Just thinking about how he had interacted with such a big shot made him happy. Lonely Little City was not far from Marshal Yang City. After half a day, Tian's group of three arrived at Marshal Yang City. Along the way, Mo, Rushi, and Cher did not speak. The atmosphere was a little heavy. Fortunately, no assassins appeared. Tian paid 30 low-grade spirit stones as an entrance fee. Then he asked the guards at the city gates and went straight to the Zhu family's mercenary field. Mr. Nya, just as Tian was about to enter the Zhu family's mercenary field, a familiar voice sounded. Li Quan's figure appeared. He was very happy to see Tian. Tian's impression of Li Quan was not too bad. After the latter found out that he was an 8th-grade alchemist, he even spoke up for him in front of Zhu Lian. It was just that Zhu Lian changed his attitude very quickly. He was extremely difficult to get along with. Mr. Nya, when did you come to Marshal Yang City? Li Quan was very enthusiastic. His attitude towards Tian was very respectful. I just arrived. Tian smiled faintly. He did not stand on ceremony. He said directly, Elderly, I want to hire some powerful mercenaries as guards. Can you introduce a few to me? You need guards? Hearing Tian's words, Li Quan was stunned. His first reaction was that Tian was already so strong. Why would he need guards? However, when he saw Mo, Rushi, and Cher behind Tian, he understood. Tian was strong enough. Unfortunately, the girl beside him was also beautiful enough. He would definitely inexplicably attract hatred, just like the few people from the Lone Eagle Castle. Chapter 1109. After a moment, Tian stood in the mercenary field and saw many martial artists fighting. Furthermore, it was very intense. But in his eyes, these mercenaries were all too weak. They were basically all Deva Realm strength. There are even Divine Wheel Realm martial artists. Won't do. Too weak. Tian looked at the mercenaries in front of him and said while shaking his head, Mr. Nya, don't be anxious. This is our low-level mercenary field. If you think it won't do, then let's go to the mid-level mercenary field to take a look. Li Quan had long known that Tian looked down on the low-level mercenary field's mercenaries. He chuckled and indicated for Tian to follow him. Old man Li, let's go straight to the high-level mercenary field. The corners of Tian's mouth twitched a little, and he said straightforwardly. He did not wish to waste time. Judging from the low-level mercenary strength, the mid-level mercenary strength was also martial artists who had just reached Heavenly Emperor Realm. Making martial artists with this kind of strength go and confront Azura assassins, that was sending them to their deaths. Mr. Nya, our mercenary field doesn't have many high-level mercenaries. Furthermore, their prices are... Li Quan did not expect Tian to be so anxious and could not help smiling awkwardly. Relax, I can afford it. Without waiting for Li Quan to finish, Tian directly interrupted him. Li Quan's expression froze slightly. Then, he recalled that Tian once casually gave Zhu Lian a bottle of illusion flower blood lotus spirit fluid. The generosity of the gesture made one's hair stand on end. Thinking up to this point, Li Quan was no longer worried. He chuckled and said, All right then, Mr. Nya, please follow me. Very soon, Tian Trio followed Li Quan to the high-level mercenary field. Their strength is so strong. Mo Rushi could not help exclaiming in admiration when she saw the mercenaries fighting each other in the mercenary field. The battlefield extended into the sky, massive, limitless released, heaven and earth trembling. Tian looked at those mercenaries high up in the sky, but he frowned repeatedly. These mercenary strengths were all around 2nd level or 3rd level Heavenly Emperor. They were indeed already very strong. Unfortunately, it was still far from satisfying Yetion. What he really wanted were martial artists above 5th level Heavenly Emperor. Only a warrior with this level of strength could fight against the Azura's Gate assassins. Mr. Yetion, this is the strongest mercenary in our mercenary field. Li Quan couldn't help but frown when he saw that Yetion was still dissatisfied. Weak, still too weak. Yetion shook his head helplessly, unable to hide the disappointment in his eyes. He originally thought that coming to Liangwu City, he would be able to hire several 5th level Heavenly Emperor martial artists to protect him. Looks like he was too naive. Even in the Heaven Realm's Divine Realm, people able to reach the Heavenly Emperor realm were still less than 1 in 10,000, and 5th level Heavenly Emperor was a dividing line in the Heavenly Emperor realm. In the entire Heaven Realm, the martial artists whose strength was at 5th level Heavenly Emperor realm were merely over 10,000 people. One had to know that there were hundreds of billions of people in the Celestial Realm. Weak. Right at this time, an icy voice sounded out high up in the sky, staring at Yetion with a dark gaze, roaring angrily. A mere 2nd level Heavenly Emperor trash like you actually dares to say that we're weak? Yetion raised his head slightly and looked at the person who roared angrily. The latter was an extremely muscular middle-aged man, a full beard on his face, appearing extremely boorish. 4th level Heavenly Emperor strength. Yetion sensed with his divine sense and detected the other party's strength. His gaze flickered slightly, finally heaving a sigh of relief in his heart. Finally, there was a mercenary whose strength was passable. Shui Yong, you're insolent. Li Quan looked at that burly man high up in the sky. His gaze could not help turning dark, and he berated, "Did you forget your identity? Mr. Nya is the mercenary arena's honored guest. He has the right to evaluate any mercenary." Shui Yong's face fell, suppressing the immense rage in his heart, but he did not dare to speak anymore. Seeing this scene, Yetion could not help frowning. Shui Yong was already 4th level Heavenly Emperor strength, and he was actually so apprehensive of Li Quan. It seemed like the Zhu family really had a major faction behind them. You're called Shui Yong, right? At this time, Yetion suddenly opened his mouth and looked at Shui Yong with a faint smile. So what if I am? Shui Yong had a furious look. Clearly, he was simmering with rage because he was reprimanded. I said that you're weak, and you're unconvinced? Is that it? Yetion did not mind and continued to ask. Your strength is only 2nd level Heavenly Emperor. What right do you have to say that I'm weak? Shui Yong roared solemnly. Clearly, he mistakenly thought that Yetion's words earlier were insulting them. Yeah, your strength isn't strong either. What right do you have to say that we're weak? The other mercenaries also stopped fighting and looked toward Yetion one after another, roaring in unison. Being mocked as a weakling by others for no rhyme or reason, anyone would not be happy. Mr. Nye, look at this. Li Quan had an ugly look. He did not expect that a sentence from Yetion even incited public wrath. Yetion waved his hand, indicating that it was fine. His gaze was dark as he looked at Shui Yong and said, You're the strongest person among this group of mercenaries. Let's exchange one move and decide the victor in one move. How about it? Amen? Shui Yong suddenly froze, then immediately burst into laughter as if he heard a joke, and said, You exchange one move with me? You're courting death here. Whether or not I'm courting death is my business. You just have to answer yes or no. Yetion had an indifferent look, his eyes firm. Okay. Shui Yong did not hesitate in the slightest, nodding his head with a smug look. Yetion smiled faintly and said, Shui Yong, you're 4th level Heavenly Emperor strength. I'm only 2nd level Heavenly Emperor strength. We won't use martial techniques, won't use essence energy, just martial bodies. Exchange one punch and see whose martial body is stronger, okay? Fine. When Shui Yong heard Yetion's suggestion, he was first taken aback, then immediately agreed without the slightest hesitation. He was also afraid that if he used martial techniques, he might accidentally kill Nyetian. That would be terrible. Looking at Li Quan's attitude toward Nyetian, the latter's status was clearly not low. Following that, two figures leaped up at the same time, stepping onto a nearby arena. Mr. Nyeyu, Li Quan froze for a moment and suddenly came to his senses. He originally wanted to stop it, but at this time, Nyetian and Shui Yong were already standing on the arena. This is bad. Li Quan's face turned pale, lamenting incessantly in his heart. Nyetian was a Tier 8 alchemy master. Who knew what faction he had behind him? If he was beaten to death or injured by Shui Yong, then it would really be over. At this time, all the mercenaries looked at the figures on the arena and started shouting loudly one after another. Big Brother Yong, cripple this kid with one punch and teach him a lesson. Cripple an arm of his and let him have a taste of suffering. This kid is too arrogant to actually look down on us high-rank mercenaries. All of the mercenaries were certain that Nyetian would definitely lose. Kid, you asked for it yourself. Can't blame me. On the arena, Shui Yong chuckled. Immediately, his body trembled. A surging aura rose up. 4th level Heavenly Emperor martial artists. Even if they did not use martial techniques, essence energy was still very powerful. Make your move. The corners of Nyetian's mouth curled up into a hint of a strange smile. Clenching his fists tightly, he gave a low roar and directly smashed a punch over. The sound of tearing through the air immediately emitted a whistling sound. At virtually the same time, Shui Yong also punched out. His iron fist was like a tiger galloping out. Bang! The moment the two fists collided, a muffled sound rang out. It was actually like metal and stone colliding. In the next instant, a figure flew out backward, smashing heavily below the arena. Everyone focused their eyes and looked. The person who landed below the arena was actually Shui Yong. In contrast, Nyetian's figure stood towering on the arena like a boulder, not moving an inch at all. With one punch, the outcome was decided. Chapter 11:10. On the arena, Nyetian and Shui Yong's fists collided, but the latter directly flew out backward, smashing onto the ground. Everyone stared at Nyetian dumbfoundedly. That short instant earlier was like a dream. No one could react to it. Shui Yong was defeated so cleanly. A 4th level Heavenly Emperor martial body was not as powerful as a 2nd level Heavenly Emperor martial body. How is this possible? If not for seeing it with their own eyes, no one would believe it at all. The corners of Nyetian's mouth twitched slightly. Looking at the Shui Yong, who was still on the ground with a dazed look, he said coolly, Shui Yong, you lost. I lost. Shui Yong seemed to have woken up from a dream, completely unable to accept the result before his eyes. He originally wanted to teach Nyetian a good lesson, so he used 100% of his strength. Who knew that the other party's fist was as heavy as a mountain, completely not giving him any chance to resist, directly blasting him down. You're a heaven and earth spirit physique? Shui Yong crawled to his feet. Suddenly thinking of this, he immediately cried out strangely. Heaven and earth spirit physique? The surrounding mercenaries were first taken aback, then immediately reacted, one after another confirming that Nyetian was absolutely a Heavenly Emperor spirit physique. Furthermore, it was a very high-rank heaven and earth spirit physique. Considered so, Nyetian did not go and explain anything either. Smiling faintly, he leaped down from the arena. But his answer made all of the mercenaries burst into an uproar, glaring at him one after another. This kid is so despicable. Turns out that he's a heaven and earth spirit physique. No wonder he didn't let Big Brother Shui Yong use martial techniques and essence energy. Cunning brat, the martial body of a heaven and earth spirit physique martial artist is more terrifying than ordinary martial artists to begin with. He's only competing in martial body with Shui Yong. Of course, he's sure to win and not lose. Mother of asterisk her, what a coward. If you have the guts, fight Big Brother Shui Yong one-on-one and have a life-and-death battle. These mercenaries were all hot-tempered people. Hearing that Nyetian admitted that he was a heaven and earth spirit physique, they were naturally enraged and actually instigated Shui Yong and Nietion to have a life-and-death battle. Nietion's brows furrowed slightly, then immediately shook his head and smiled, not haggling with these people. The reason why he competed with Shui Yong in terms of martial body was because he did not want to hurt the latter. How could these mercenaries know that Nietion annihilated a 4th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist not long ago? Furthermore, it was an assassin, his strength absolutely not beneath Shui Yong's. "Shut up, all of you." At this time, Shui Yong let out an angry roar. His angry eyes swept across the other mercenaries, and he said in a deep voice, "I, Shui Yong, am a person who can afford to lose." He has the spiritual body of heaven and earth, which is also his strength. Since I agreed to compete with him in martial body, I must be willing to lose. What the F*** are you guys blabbering about? The furious roar caused everyone to be dumbstruck. They looked at Shui Yong in shock and wondered if this fellow had taken the wrong medicine. At this moment, Shui Yong took a step forward and came to Nietion's side. He said solemnly, "Thank you for showing mercy, mister." Shui Yong admits defeat wholeheartedly. Show mercy? The crowd was stunned once again, and their faces stiffened in an instant. Shui Yong's words were very clear. Nietion had shown mercy in that punch just now. My God, showing mercy, he could still send Shui Yong flying with one punch. If he did not show mercy, then what? Nothing. Nietion smiled faintly, a calm look on his face. That punch just now, he indeed did not use his full strength. He was a person who possessed a 9-star dragon vein, coupled with the 320 billion star power awakened within his body. The might of his martial body was comparable to a 5th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist. 5th-level Heavenly Emperor was a watershed in the Heavenly Emperor realm. It had this qualitative difference from 4th-level Heavenly Emperor. If Nietion went all out just now, even if Shui Yong did not die, he would at least have an arm crippled. Shui Yong was still not considered too stupid and discerned that Nietion showed mercy. Furthermore, he was a person who dared to take responsibility for what he did. This point was worthy of admiration. Oldly, I want to hire Shui Yong. Can I? Nietion walked to Li Quan's side and asked. But the latter had a blank look and had not reacted yet. Can, of course you can, Nietion shouted again. Only then did Li Quan react and hurriedly said, Mr. Nya. While at this time, Shui Yong suddenly walked over, his expression somewhat awkward as he said, If you want to hire me, I have to tell my teacher first. Your teacher? Nietion was slightly taken aback and asked, Is he a mercenary too? All right. Li Quan also suddenly remembered at this time and called out, Shui Yong's teacher is a lunatic, very difficult to deal with. I think Mr. Nya better find someone else. Lordly, Shui Yong's expression turned slightly cold, a hint of coldness shooting out his eyes as he said solemnly, You're not allowed to talk about my teacher. Li Quan only had 9th-level heaven being strength. Being glared at by Shui Yong like this, he immediately felt suffocated and softened instead, saying, Sorry, I said wrong. Li Quan knew that he could scold Shui Yong however he wanted normally, but if he dared to say anything about his teacher, this guy would definitely fight it out with him. Shui Yong had once directly killed another mercenary with one punch because he said that his teacher was a lunatic. From then on, everyone knew that Shui Yong's teacher was his reverse scale, and he couldn't be insulted. Mr. Nya, my teacher is the strongest mercenary in Mercenary City. Shui Yong looked at Nietion with a serious expression. At this moment, upon hearing Shui Yong's words, the others seemed to be unwilling to agree to it, and they turned to look at him speechlessly. What are you looking at? Shui Yong bellowed. My teacher once killed an Earth Azura from the Azura's Gate. Can you do it? Nietion's eyes shone with intense desire as he asked, Shui Yong, where is your master? Wang Zhui was an Azura Gate yellow rank Azura, his strength already at the 4th-level Heavenly Emperor. A black rank Azura might reach the 5th-level Heavenly Emperor, while an Earth rank Azura was extremely likely to be a 7th-level Heavenly Emperor, even an 8th-level Heavenly Emperor powerhouse. If Shui Yong's teacher had really killed an Earth Azura before, then this person's strength should be very strong. If he could hire this person as a bodyguard, and Mo Rushi and Cher would be much safer. Shuiyong was an honest person and would never lie. Mr. Nya. Li Quan could see what Nya Tian was thinking, so he said, Lord Long Outyin has indeed killed an Azura's Gate assassin before, but now that he has lost an arm, his strength has greatly declined. It's best if you don't go looking for him. Hearing Li Quan's words, Nya Tian's eyes slightly froze, and his whole body directly froze on the spot. Mr. Nya, what's wrong? Li Quan couldn't help but ask when he saw Nya Tian staring blankly. Nya Tian's eyes trembled, and he was stunned for a full 10 seconds before he reacted. He suddenly grabbed Li Quan's shoulders, and with an excited expression, he almost screamed, The Long Outyin you speak of, is it the #1 lunatic in the heaven world, Heavenly Emperor Kuang-Wu? Long Outyin? Seeing Nya Tian's excited expression, Li Quan had no idea what was going on and could only nod repeatedly. The Long Outyin he spoke of was indeed Heavenly Emperor Kuang-Wu, Long Outyin, once the #1 lunatic in the heaven world. However, this title was already a matter of 100 years ago, and the current martial artists had almost forgotten this title. Many people had even forgotten the name Long Outyin. Nya Tian was not someone from the Sumer world, so how did he know the title Long Outyin from 100 years ago? Long Outyin. Nya Tian's eyes flickered intensely, a blazing light flashing in his eyes. Chapter 1111. Long Outyin. This name reminded Nya Tian of many things. 100 years ago, Long Outyin was known as the #1 madman in the heaven realm. At that time, Nya Tian had just become the #1 war god in the heaven realm, and Emperor Daybreak built a war god temple for him that was comparable to the Daybreak Shrine. Long Outyin was not convinced and said some bad things about Nya Tian. At that time, Nya Tian was also young and impetuous. He ordered his ancient divine guards to chase after Long Outyin for 9 days and 9 nights. In the end, he even personally captured Long Outyin and forced him to kneel outside the war god temple for half a month before reluctantly stopping. But later, Nya Tian and Long Outyin had similar interests and found that the latter was arrogant and sincere. Therefore, the two actually became sworn brothers half a month later. After 100 years, how could Nya Tian not be excited when he heard the name Long Outyin again? Mr. Nya, are you all right? Li Quan couldn't help but frown upon seeing Nya Tian's appearance. I'm fine. Nya Tian finally calmed down, but he still could not hide the excitement in his heart. He turned to Shuiyong and said, Can I go and see your teacher? Shuiyong had a strange expression. He was not a fool. Of course, he could tell that Nya Tian seemed to know his teacher. Otherwise, why would he be so excited? All right. After thinking for a while, Shuiyong nodded and said, But my teacher has a bad temper. So when Mr. Nya sees him, don't say anything and leave everything to me. If he doesn't let me go, then I can't do anything about it. No problem. Nya Tian nodded and agreed readily. Then, Nya Tian and the other two left the mercenary field with Shuiyong and came to a very remote place. That is where my teacher and I live. Shuiyong pointed to an ordinary courtyard in front and said. Nya Tian frowned slightly, but he had already heard a violent roar. Luo Chunhun, you old bastard, you used a crafty plot to kill my big brother, and you even used a corpse curse on me. If I recover my strength one day, I'll definitely charge into the Day-Night Shrine and cut off your head to kick around like a ball. Corpse curse mark. Damn corpse curse mark, it hurts so much. Chaotic curses resounded in Nya Tian's ears. Brother Long, it's really you. As Nya Tian listened to the roaring voice, his eyes became slightly infatuated. He was absolutely certain that this voice belonged to his sworn brother, Long Outyin. Mr. Nya Tian, my teacher sometimes goes crazy and curses people. Don't overthink it. Shuiyong knew that Nya Tian couldn't help frowning when he heard Long Outyin's curses. He did not want people to know about the matter of Long Outyin frequently cursing Luo Chenhan. Hence, that was why he chose such a remote place to live. Let's go in and take a look. Nya Tian suppressed the palpitation in his heart and strode forward. He knew that after he perished, Long Outyin definitely suffered Luo Chenhuan's pursuit and must have suffered a lot. Thinking up to this point, Nye Tian was abnormally sorrowful in his heart. "Teacher, I'm back." Shuiyong came outside the small courtyard and shouted loudly, "Get lost!" However, what responded to him was Long Outyan's furious roar. "You useless trash, already F asterisk king 60 or 70 years old. Only F asterisk king 4th level heavenly emperor strength. Your father is counting on you to take revenge for me. Are you going to wait until I die of old age?" "Mr. Nye, don't take offense. Teacher's temper is like this. I also..." Shuiyong had long been used to Long Outyan's reprimanding. But with Nye Tian by his side, he could not help feeling a little awkward. Shuiyong, not waiting for him to finish, Nye Tian opened his mouth solemnly and said, "Outyan feels uncomfortable in his heart. It's been hard on you these few years." Nye Tian could tell that Long Outyan definitely threw a tantrum every day. Fortunately, he took in a good disciple who always guarded by his side. When Shuiyong saw Nye Tian's serious look, he could not help being taken aback. The latter actually started to console him. "Mr. Nye, I'm an orphan. It was teacher who raised me. Without him, I'd have long died on the streets. I know that he dotes on me. No matter what he says, I won't mind." Shuiyong pursed his lips and said coolly. Nye Tian clenched his fists slightly, the anger in his heart like a suppressed volcano. "Shuiyong, who did you bring?" At this time, Long Outyan detected something and roared angrily. "If you want to leave, then leave. Don't care about me. I'm already your burden. You wanted to leave long ago. If you should get lost, then get lost." "Teacher." Shuiyong's heart skipped a beat, and his eyes became a little wet. How could he leave his teacher, Long Outyan? At this time, Nye Tian suddenly shouted Long Outyan's name. At the same time, his body shook, and a stream of sword chi rushed up to the sky. The brilliance of the sword was released, and the sword light shot out thousands of meters away. In the small courtyard, a skinny old man saw the sword light in the air, and his furious expression suddenly became dull. He opened his mouth wide, but couldn't make any sound. Nye Tian stood where he was, motionless. He didn't go in, nor did he say anything. When Long Outyan's voice stopped, there was dead silence in the courtyard, which was somewhat strange. "Mr. Nye, this is... what's wrong?" Shuiyong was dumbfounded. He didn't know what had happened. This was the first time that he had seen Long Outyan remain silent for so long. "Outyan, I'm back." Nye Tian didn't answer Shuiyong's question, but shouted again, "Big brother." In the small courtyard, a howl was heard, and then a figure rushed out. The moment he saw Nye Tian, he was petrified. Long Outyan saw the sword light in the air, and he was very sure that it was Nye Tian's sword intent. But when he rushed out, he didn't see Nye Tian, but a silver-haired young man. "Outyan, it's me." Nye Tian looked at Long Outyan in front of him, and realized that he was no longer the wild, unbridled, and arrogant madman he had once been. Instead, he was now a skinny old man who looked like a bag of bones. "Big brother." Long Outyan looked at the silver-haired young man in front of him, and finally confirmed the familiarity in his eyes. He staggered a step and hugged Nye Tian. The two brothers reunited after 100 years, and the bitterness was not something others could understand. What's going on?" Shuiyong, who was standing aside, was dumbfounded. Cher was also dumbfounded, and she didn't understand what was going on. Only Mo Rushi had a faint smile on her face. She knew that Nye Tian must have found a friend from his previous life. After a long time, the two figures finally separated. Nye Tian and Long Outyan looked at each other, and for a long time, they didn't say anything. "Outyan, Big Brother has implicated you." After a long silence, Nye Tian finally opened his mouth, and his eyes were filled with guilt. He knew that the reason why Long Outyan became like this was definitely because of Luo Chenhun. "Big brother, what are you saying? Us two brothers are still alive, and we will definitely kill our way back to the Dust Shrine, and let that old bastard Luo Chenhun pay the price." Long Outyan was very excited, and the turbidity in his eyes dissipated and was replaced by a sharp light. Chapter 11-12. In the courtyard. "Big brother, what happened to you all these years?" Long Out Yin calmed down and asked excitedly with sparkling eyes. Tian didn't try to hide anything and told him what had happened. Both Long Out Yin and Shui Yong were dumbfounded, especially Shui Yong, who was petrified on the spot. Only now did he realize that the person who punched him just now was the #1 war god in the heaven realm. "Oh my god, Shui Yong exclaimed in his heart, but he didn't know what to say. Mo Rushi already knew Tian's identity, so she wasn't surprised, but Cher only understood half of it and was confused. In fact, Cher didn't care who Tian was. In her heart, Tian had never changed. He was still the kind young man she met in the Rainbow Valley. "Out Yin, tell me, what happened to you again?" Tian calmed down and looked at Long Out Yin's skeleton-like body and frowned. In his memory, Long Out Yin was a tall and arrogant young man, but after more than 100 years, he became a skeleton-like old man in front of him. Long Out Yin heaved a long sigh and told Long Out Yin about his experience. After Tian died, Long Out Yin was also chased by Luo Chenhan. Originally, Luo Chenhan had already captured Long Out Yin, but Illusion Emperor Bailey Fengxian acted as a guarantor for Long Out Yin. So Luo Chenhan left the Yin corpse curse on Long Out Yin's body and banished him from the Daynite celestial realm, never to return. "It seems that Bailey Fengxian saved you." Tian frowned, and a gentle and elegant face appeared in his mind. Illusion Emperor Bailey Fengxian was one of the 9 emperors, and he had some friendship with Long Out Yin's late father, so it wasn't strange that he was willing to save Long Out Yin's life. "What is the Yin corpse curse on your body?" Tian's eyes flickered, and he used his divine senses to probe. He saw that when Long Out Yin was speaking, he had been suppressing his expression. Clearly, he was in great pain. Tian extended his divine sense over and immediately saw that Long Out Yin's yuan meridians were covered in black runes. They were constantly releasing evil energy that invaded Long Out Yin's yuan meridians. Long Out Yin's skin was dark, and he was as thin as a match. He was under the pressure of the Yin corpse curse. "Big brother, this is a gift from that old bastard, Luo Chenhan. One day, I will definitely return it to him." Long Out Yin chuckled and pretended to be indifferent. Tian slightly knit his brows. He was thinking about what kind of power could break the Yin corpse curse seal. At this time, Tian suddenly discovered that Long Out Yin only had one arm left and couldn't help but ask, "What happened to your arm?" "Sigh." Long Out Yin let out a long sigh and said, "Previously, I've always been a mercenary and encountered a big client who was willing to offer a rank 9 spirit pill to let me escort person. Who knew that that person offended Azura sex people? I killed an Earth rank Azura and had an arm severed by the other party." Tian's brows involuntarily knitted even tighter, immediately understanding something. Over 100 years ago, Long Out Yin was already 8th level Heavenly Emperor strength, but the current him was still 8th level Heavenly Emperor strength. With his martial Dao talent, he should have long advanced to 9th level Heavenly Emperor. And the reason why he did not advance must be because of the Yin corpse curse seal. 8th level Heavenly Emperor martial artists, even if their limbs were severed, they could still regenerate. Long Out Yin's arm not growing back was definitely the suppression of the Yin corpse curse seal too. "Big brother, you don't have to worry about me. Although my strength can't make it anymore, I won't die for a while yet." Long Out Yin laughed, but the smile on his face made his heart ache even more. How could he watch his brother suffer the agony of the curse seal all the time? "Corpse Luo, do you have a way?" Tian directly let out Corpse Luo Fiend Lord and asked solemnly. Corpse Luo Fiend Lord had not appeared for a long time and had been cultivating all along, refining the primordial spirits that he devoured previously. Currently, he was already 1st level Heavenly Emperor strength too. "Corpse Luo." When Long Out Yin saw the little mouse that suddenly appeared in front of him, he could not help being taken aback and said in surprise, "Your Corpse Luo Fiend Lord?" Long Out Yin had fought with Corpse Luo Fiend Lord before too. He did not expect that the latter actually became like this. Corpse Luo Fiend Lord shot a glance at Long Out Yin, an appearance like he could not be bothered with you. Divine sense probed the latter once. Then a strange gleam flashed across his eyes as he said, "Master, don't you have the 8 desolate ghost bone in your hands?" 8 desolate ghost bone. Nyetian was first taken aback, then immediately reacted and exclaimed, "How did I forget this?" Long Ao-Yin lost an arm, while Nyetian just happened to have one of the 4 great profound arms, the 8 desolate ghost bone. As long as he reattached Long Ao-Yin's arm, it could at least let his strength recover a little. "Master." At this time, Corpse Luo Fiend Lord mused and said, "The Een Corpse Curse Seal is a sinister and poisonous power, while the 8 desolate ghost bone can give birth to the 8 desolate ghost chi. This ghost chi is an even more sinister power and can directly absorb the Een Corpse Curse Seal." "What do you mean?" Nyetian was slightly taken aback, not quite understanding. Simply put, as long as this guy has the 8 desolate ghost bone, not only can he remove the Een Corpse Curse Seal in his body, but he can also stimulate the power of the 8 desolate ghost bone to the limits. Corpse Luo Fiend Lord said lightly, very pleased. "If there is no accident, Long Ao-Yin's strength in the future will definitely be comparable to the Heaven Realm's 9 emperors." "Really?" Long Ao-Yin let out a strange cry. He stretched out his hand and lifted Corpse Luo Fiend Lord up, extremely excited. "Quickly put this lord down." Corpse Luo Fiend Lord was quite frightened, his voice shrill. Nyetian was very happy. He directly took out the 8 desolate ghost bone and said, "Corpse Luo, the matter of reattaching Ao-Yin's arm, I'll leave it to you." Corpse Luo Fiend Lord took the 8 desolate ghost bone and said to Long Ao-Yin, "Your arm has been broken for dozens of years. The meridians are already dead. I will cut it open again and use the magic flower blood lotus spirit liquid to wash it, stimulating the meridians to regenerate. This process is a little painful. Can you bear it?" "Little mouse, Lousy has lived for so long. What kind of pain have I not suffered?" Long Ao-Yin said with a face full of disdain, "Don't mention cutting my arm. Even if you cut my body, Lousy will not cry out in pain." Hearing Long Ao-Yin's words, Nyetian couldn't help but frown. Just a moment ago, Long Ao-Yin was still screaming from the Een Corpse Curse Seal. "Corpse Luo, how long do you need?" Nyetian took out a bottle of magic flower blood lotus spirit liquid and handed it to Corpse Luo Fiend Lord, asking. Their current situation was very dangerous. The Azura's Gate could arrive at any time. If Corpse Luo Fiend Lord were to reattach Long Ao-Yin's arm and the Azura's assassins came, then it would be troublesome. One day, Corpse Luo Fiend Lord thought for a moment, then said in a heavy tone, "Good." Nyetian nodded. "There's no time to lose. You can start now." Corpse Luo Fiend Lord complied, then entered the room together with Long Ao-Yin. A moment later, Long Ao-Yin's heart-wrenching scream resounded in the room. Nyetian's face darkened. This scream was too exaggerated. Chapter 11:13. Nyetian looked at Shuiyong. He discovered that it seemed like the latter had stopped at 4th level Heavenly Emperor for a very long time already. "Martial uncle, I reached 4th level Heavenly Emperor strength at 36 years old. It's already been 30 years now." Shuiyong's expression was slightly awkward. Stagnating for 30 years was indeed not something glorious. Previously, Long Ao-Yin called him trash, only having 4th level Heavenly Emperor strength at 60 to 70 years old. Actually, he already worked very hard. It was just that the more anxious he was, the harder it was to increase his strength. It's been 30 years. Nyetian mused. It seemed like Shuiyong's talent was very good. To be able to reach 4th level Heavenly Emperor strength at 36 years old, it was already very rare. This kind of talent, breaking through to 5th level Heavenly Emperor, should not be too difficult. Nyetian guessed that it must be that Long Ao-Yin frequently scolded Shuiyong for being disappointing, causing the latter to feel great pressure in his heart, having a martial Dao heart demon. The more he wanted to break through, the more he could not break through. "Shuiyong, your talent is pretty good. You should have broken through more than 10 years ago." As Nyetian said, a spirit pill appeared in his hand. Immediately, a massive aura was released, filling the entire small courtyard. "Martial uncle, this is..." Shuiyong's eyes turned sluggish, his expression turning stiff. This is a rank 9 spirit pill, 7 revolutions dragon heart pill. You consume it. It should be able to help you break through to 5th level Heavenly Emperor. Nietian handed the spirit pill to Shuiyong. This was precisely the 7 revolutions dragon heart pill that he had Chun Genie refine with the Fiend Realm demonic dragon spirit core previously. The medicinal strength of the 7 revolutions dragon heart pill was strong, sufficient to help Shuiyong break through strength. Many thanks, Martial Uncle. Shuiyong received the spirit pill with both hands with a grateful look. Don't call me Martial Uncle in the future. Just call me Mr. Will Do, Nietian said with a faint smile. Actually, Shuiyong calling a Martial Uncle was also right. It was just that Nietian did not like this form of address too much. Shuiyong nodded his head and no longer delayed, turning around and entering a room, preparing to consume the spirit pill to advance. Not breaking through to 5th level Heavenly Emperor for 30 years. Now that he suddenly had the chance, why would he wait again? Looking at Shuiyong's back, Nietian couldn't help but smile. For so many years, Shuiyong had been taking care of Long Outyin. Rushi, Cher, you two should go rest as well. Nietian looked at Mo, Rushi, and Cher. The two girls had been very tired during this period of time, especially Cher, who needed to rest. The following period of time was extremely crucial. Long Outyin was reattaching his arm, and Shuiyong was consuming spirit pills. It would take about a day. Nietian secretly prayed that nothing would go wrong. Mo, Rushi, and Cher entered the room to rest, while Nietian sat in the courtyard. The current him was already 2nd level Heavenly Emperor strength, awakening 320 billion stellar force in his body. More importantly, he could learn the 2nd move of the Starry Sky, ancient martial art. Nietian sat cross-legged and let his spiritual consciousness enter the celestial river domain. The domain origin formation activated with a rumble, and the entire domain's space shone with starlight. Nietian looked at the 4th layer of the galaxy. Countless starlight runes flickered, dazzling and magnificent. The Starry Sky ancient martial arts scroll floated in the galaxy, like a heavenly book, existing there since ancient times, releasing a mysterious and ancient aura. Nietian did not hesitate. His mind stirred, and the Starry Sky ancient martial art sensed it and slowly unfolded. Immediately, endless starlight runes were released, as if the galaxy was falling, and the entire galaxy became even more dazzling. Following that, the starlight runes converged into a humanoid phantom in the air, and the starlight giant stood above the galaxy. Nietian looked at that starlight giant, his eyes very calm. He had already seen it once, so of course, he was no longer flustered and surprised. Starry Sky, ancient martial arts, 2nd move, what will it be? The corners of Nietian's mouth curled up slightly, feeling very curious in his heart. The 1st move, Morning Star Break, might be a little complicated to release, but its power was very terrifying, comparable to the Proud Sword Art's forbidden move. Moreover, Nietian knew that he was far from unleashing the power of Morning Star Break. When he awakened enough stellar force in his body, Morning Star Break could unleash its true power. The starlight giant stood above the galaxy, its towering figure like a mountain, as if it was the master of everything. Starry Sky, ancient martial art, 2nd move, meteor wings. After that, a voice that was vast like an ocean resounded. The starlight giant's figure shook slightly as boundless stellar energy converged together, and it actually transformed into a pair of glistening starlight wings on its back. It seemed like a god of the starry sky. Almost at the same time, Nietian's body actually reacted. With a slight tremble, endless stellar force gushed out from his back, and a pair of 10-meter-long starlight wings appeared. His body actually involuntarily flew up. Nietian was slightly stunned, and when he came out of the Starry Sky domain, he found that his body was already in midair. What a terrifying pair of wings! Nietian turned back to look at the pair of meteor wings behind him, and could not help but frown. When the meteor wings appeared, his body actually seemed to become light, completely weightless. Let's try the speed of the meteor wings. Nietian was abnormally excited, and with a flap of his wings, his body seemed to have directly turned into a meteor, flashing and disappearing. When he stopped again, he was actually already tens of thousands of meters away. So fast, Nietian's figure froze in midair, and his eyes trembled violently. The speed of the meteor wings was too fast, beyond his expectations. Originally, he thought that the proud sword wings was fast enough, allowing him to reach a speed of more than 5,000 meters per second. However, the speed of the meteor wings was more than double that of the proud sword wings, and the instantaneous speed was definitely more than 10,000 meters per second. This is too scary. Nietian was shocked. Of course, he knew that the current speed was only the initial speed of the meteor wings. When the stellar force in his body was fully awakened, the speed of the meteor wings would be absolutely unimaginable, so fast that it could directly shatter the void. What was even weirder was that Nietian sensed that not only did the meteor wings possess incredible speed, but they also possessed incredible offensive prowess. The star power within them was so strong that a casual strike from the meteor wings wouldn't be any weaker than a sword strike from him. Furthermore, launching an attack under this kind of speed, if coupled with the power of the stellar soul, most likely even a 5th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist would find it very strenuous to defend. Meteor wings, very good. Yet Tian smiled faintly and put away the wings. The Starry Sky ancient martial art was too terrifying. The first two forms, one move, Morning Star Daybreak, the other move, Meteor Wings, were all close to freakish moves. The Starry Sky ancient martial art had a total of 9 forms. Nietian already did not know how he should imagine the terror of the latter 7 forms. Putting away the wings, Nietian wanted to return to the small courtyard. But right at this time, he heard rustling sounds out, as if there was a large group of people approaching him. Amen. Nietian's gaze turned intense slightly, and his brows furrowed. Following that, his divine sense spread out, activating the holographic divine patterns. Everything within a radius of 100,000 meters appeared perfectly in his mind. On the holographic projection, several dozen black-clothed figures advanced rapidly towards the small courtyard where Mo Rushi and the rest were at. Each aura was very powerful, and they were actually all around 4th-level Heavenly Emperor. There were even 5th-level Heavenly Emperor powerhouses. Chapter 11:14. In the void, Nietian's figure was hidden. Even though he was several tens of thousands of meters away, he could still clearly see the Azura mark on a martial artist's body. The holographic projection was very magical. As long as Nietian concentrated, he could enlarge a certain image infinitely. Sure enough, it's people from the Azura's gate. Nietian's heart sank. Worry was written all over his face. It was already late at night, and Long Outyin was connecting his arm, while Shuiyon was absorbing the energy of the 7 Revolutions Dragonheart Dan. This was the most crucial moment, and if he was disturbed, he would be in trouble. Nietian forced himself to calm down, his divine sense sensing over even more carefully. He immediately determined the number and strength of the arrivals. 10 4th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists, 5 5th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists, and 1 6th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist. After confirming the enemy's strength, Nietian sucked in a breath of cold air and cursed, "Holy shit." This time, the Azura Gate could be said to have put in a lot of capital to actually send out such a powerful lineup, just in order to kill Nietian, this 2nd-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist. Such a terrifying lineup was sufficient to pose a threat to 7th-level, even 8th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists. Luo Chunhun, in order to kill me, you actually colluded with the Azura's Gate. You're really unscrupulous. Nietian cursed in his heart. He didn't know why Luo Chunhun was involved with the Shura's Gate, but he knew that this time, Luo Chunhun and the Shura's Gate were determined to kill Nietian. Luo Chunhun must be afraid of something, not daring to make a move himself. So he let the Azura's Gate do it. Despicable. Nietian would have a hard time dealing with any one of these Azura assassins, let alone so many of them. What should I do? Nietion could feel the sharp auras rushing towards him, and his heart was in a mess. He did not know how long Aoyin and Shuiyong were now, so he had to stop everyone. However, it was impossible for him to do so. There's no time to think too much. I can only brace myself and do it. Nietion steeled his heart and released his battle intent. Next, a sword intent soared into the sky. The brilliance of the sword blossomed in the dark night. The sword light shot out for thousands of meters, instantly illuminating the night sky. Taking the initiative to reveal his identity, Nietion wanted to attract the Azura's Gate's attention. The silver-haired martial artist, that's him. Immediately, dozens of silhouettes descended from the sky and surrounded Nietion. Instantly, a strong murderous intent howled out of them and pressed down like sharp blades. And Nietion frowned. He actually felt a tightness in his chest, and he couldn't help but let out a muffled sound. As an Azura's Gate assassin, due to a prolonged period of killing, the killing intent in their bodies had accumulated to the point where it had almost fused with their souls. At this moment, when it was released, the oppressive aura it exuded was enough to topple mountains and overturn seas, suffocating people. More than 20 Azura Gate assassins appearing at the same time. Just this kind of killing intent was sufficient to instantly exterminate ordinary Heavenly Emperor martial artists. The current Nietion had a resolute and austere look in his eyes. Raising his head, he looked at the Azura Gate assassins in midair, his entire body releasing a wild fighting intent. Even under this kind of situation, his fighting intent was still unyielding. Nietion? At this time, a figure stepped out of the air. A majestic aura gushed out like raging waves, directly crushing down toward Nietion. 6th level Heavenly Emperor. Nietion's gaze turned intense slightly, immediately feeling a tremendous force pressing down on the top of his head. His body actually sank slightly. The ground under his feet gave a loud bang, directly shattering. The pressure of a 6th level Heavenly Emperor martial artist made Nietion feel like a 10,000 catty boulder was pressing down on his chest. Even breathing was very difficult. He lifted his head and looked at the person who spoke, his gaze involuntarily tightening. This person looked very young, actually only around 30 years old. His eyes were sinister to the extreme, his face emotionless and emotionless iciness. 6th level Heavenly Emperor strength. This person was at least a black rank Azura in the Azura Gate, even an earth rank Azura. The person you all want to kill is me, Nietion replied coldly. Then his body trembled, directly breaking through the other party's aura pressure. Even though the other party was a 6th level Heavenly Emperor martial artist, a full 4 levels higher than Nietion, wanting to rely on aura pressure to exterminate him was simply impossible. Nietion's current martial physique was sufficient to withstand the aura pressure of a 9th level Heavenly Emperor martial artist. Amen. That person was slightly taken aback, seemingly not expecting that Nietion could actually break through his aura pressure. Immediately, he laughed coldly and opened his mouth and said darkly, "A 2nd level Heavenly Emperor ant is actually able to break this Hall Master's aura pressure. A little interesting. No wonder you can kill Wang Jiwei. Hall Master Yin, don't need to talk crap with this brat. Lord Deputy Sect Master has orders. We must make him perish in body and soul. Let's make a move." At this time, an Azura assassin already could not wait anymore. Laughing coldly, he immediately made a move, smacking a palm out. His palm gripped thin air, violent essence energy condensed into a terrifying sharp claw, pressing towards Nietion. This person was very clever, wanted to take advantage of the opportunity where Nietion was being oppressed by everyone to exterminate Nietion. Azura Gate's Deputy Sect Master said, whoever killed Nietion, their Azura rank could directly rise a level. This was a very fatal temptation to all assassins. Right at that instant that person made a move. A vast and boundless power of stars suddenly gushed out from behind Nietion, instantly condensing into a pair of over 10 meters long starlight wings. It was precisely the meteor wings. Rumble. The meteor wings suddenly shook. A massive aura surged to the sky. Nietion actually directly broke through all of the aura pressure, directly soaring 10,000 meters into the sky. All the assassins felt a strange impact. Their bodies retreated at the same time, their expressions turning sluggish. What a frightening power! Someone finally reacted, sucking in a breath of cold air. These assassins never imagined that Nietion could actually escape under the pressure of more than 20 assassins. This was too strange. And, watching this scene, the strange man's eyes narrowed slightly, his heart filled with shock. What a terrifying pair of wings! His name was Yunxie, one of the Azura's Gate's 4 Hall Masters, as well as one of the Azura's Gate Sovereign's 4 great disciples. Kill him for me. Yunxie's cold eyes locked onto Nietion in midair. Letting out a shrill cry, his killing intent surged. Yes, everyone answered in unison. Their figures soared up into the sky, attacking Nietion. Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly. With the meteor wings on his back, if he wanted to escape, no one could stop him. However, he couldn't. Long Out Hien and the others were in the small courtyard, not far away. How could he escape? 12 heaven swords array open. With this thought in mind, Nietion let out an angry roar. Sword intent surged out from his body, and in midair, 12 gigantic swords appeared. Like giant pillars piercing through the sky, they emitted a blinding light in the dark night sky. And the Azura assassins below felt the mighty sword intent from the sword array and couldn't help but be stunned. Die for me! In that split second, Nietion seized the opportunity and the 12 swords instantly gathered around his body. His body was suspended in midair, his gaze locked onto one of the Azura assassins, and his sword stabbed out. Chapter 11:15. Nietion condensed the power of the sword formation and slashed down with chilling, killing intent. Ooh! The meteor wings on his back suddenly flapped. Nietion's figure was extremely fast. He looked like a real meteor as he swooped down with a whistling sound. Boom! The gigantic sword fell. The sword intent was austere, and the space trembled. In the next moment, a shrill scream rang out in the void. The Azura assassin who was hit by the sword shadow screamed, and was directly devoured by the sword will. Not even his bones were left. What? The other Shura assassins all took a deep breath in, and their eyes widened in shock. However, they were assassins who had killed countless people. In the next moment, they calmed down, and their eyes flashed with even more intense killing intent as they locked onto Nietion. Nietion's wings fluttered and his body froze in the air. He couldn't help but smile. He did not expect that the power of this sword was actually so strong to actually annihilate a 4th-level Heavenly Emperor assassin with one sword. That person's strength was comparable to Wang Jiwei's. It was really unexpected that Nietion could kill him with a sword. Looks like the meteor wings not only increases my speed to the extreme, but it also increases my sword techniques. The Starry Sky ancient martial art is indeed abnormal, Nietion said in his heart. If that sword earlier, he chose a 5th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist to attack. Even if he couldn't kill the other party, he could at least severely injure them. The terror of meteor wings greatly surprised Nietion. What are you waiting for? Kill him. At this moment, Yunxie's voice rang out. With a furious roar, his eyes were filled with an ice-cold, killing intent. He did not expect that Nietion's strength was so strange, instantly annihilating a 4th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist with 2nd-level Heavenly Emperor strength. If not for seeing it with his own eyes, it was very hard to believe. But no matter how formidable Nietion's strength was, it would also be hard for him to escape death today. Because he, Yunxie, personally taking action, how could he let a 2nd-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist escape? Kill. In an instant, the sound of killing rang out, and countless killing intents condensed into a solid form, enveloping Nietion. Nietion could feel the boundless killing intent. If it wasn't for his tough temperament, his mind might have collapsed under the pressure of the killing intent. Mad Doomsday reverse kill, Nietion bellowed angrily. His murderous gaze locked onto an Azura assassin, and he directly stabbed out with his sword. His figure moved like the wind and lightning, leaving behind several afterimages of starlight in the air. It was extremely strange. The assassin didn't even have time to react. He let out a blood-curdling scream and was directly blasted down, stirring up a cloud of dust on the ground. After taking a direct hit from Yetion's sword, that person did not die, but was seriously injured. Mad Armageddon's power was much weaker than the 12 Heaven slaying sword formation. At the same time, countless attacks came one after another, pressing down on Yetion like an avalanche. At this moment, even if Yetion had the meteor wings, he would not be able to avoid it. At the critical moment, his entire body lit up with a layer of red light. The extreme Fire Scarlet Heaven battle armor activated. At the same time, an astonishing dragon roar sounded out in his body. The dragon scale shield also activated along with it. But these were still far from enough. The power of stars around Yetion gushed out. The heaven-shrouding totem appeared, condensing and compressing into a starlight shield, protecting his entire body. This was Yetion's strongest three-layer defense at the moment, activating at the same time. Boom, 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 bang. In the next instant, countless attacks landed, directly bombarding onto the extreme Fire Scarlet Heaven battle armor. The battle armor phantom that was scarlet red like fire was completely unable to resist and directly shattered. Crack! Boom! Immediately after, the golden shield formed by the dragon scale energy also shattered with a loud bang under a crisp sound. Immediately, golden light overflowed everywhere, dragon chi filling the air. The attacks of more than a dozen 4th-level Heavenly Emperor and 5th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists were seriously too terrifying. With Yetion's current strength, it was very hard to resist. Rumble. Crack. Immediately, countless attacks landed on the starlight shield condensed by the heaven-shrouding totem. With a violent loud bang, a glaring crack appeared on the astral totem. Immediately after, spiderweb-like cracks appeared, spreading rapidly. The entire heaven-shrouding totem swayed and was on the verge of shattering. Poowork. Yetion's figure swayed, spewing out a mouthful of fresh blood. The Starry River Domain's domain origin formation immediately started revolving frenziedly. Streams of majestic and vast stellar power gushed out, rapidly repairing the cracks on the heaven-shrouding totem. Hiss! When the Azura assassins saw this scene, they all sucked in a cold breath one after another, completely not daring to believe the scene before their eyes. A 2nd-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist withstood the attacks of more than a dozen 4th-level Heavenly Emperor and 5th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists at the same time and actually blocked it. Don't stop. Kill him for me. At this time, Yunxie's voice sounded out once more, his expression becoming savage. The other assassins reacted right away, the aura in their bodies skyrocketing even more frenziedly, wanting to launch a second round of attacks on Yetion. Yetion forcefully endured the intense pain in his body. All the blood energy in his body suddenly erupted. The stench of blood spread out for several thousand meters, making people asphyxiated. What's he trying to do? Everyone was stunned, not knowing what Yetion wanted to do. Yetion knew that with his strength, if he defended, he definitely could not hold on. Hence, he might as well go all out with tears of blood. Yetion's figure stood in the void, all the sword intent in his body surging to the limit. Sword ceiling restriction array open. A low roar echoed out, blood energy flying, sword intent surging. Amidst the surging sword energy, a blood-colored sword formation appeared, directly breaking apart the surrounding killing intent oppression. What a terrifying aura! When Yunxie saw this scene by the side, his gaze could not help trembling intensely. He was a 6th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist and actually felt a genuine threat from inside the blood-colored sword formation. This person can't be left alive. In an instant, the killing intent in Yunxie's heart became even firmer. He faintly felt that if he could not kill Yetion this time, He would not have the chance anymore in the future. A second-level Heavenly Emperor actually still had the strength to retaliate under the teaming up of more than a dozen fourth-level and fifth-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists. This was too terrifying. Restriction Array. Devil Sword incinerates the world. At this time, Nietion's voice sounded out, unyielding fighting intent released with a loud bang. The sword's sealing restriction array instantly condensed, and actually formed an enormous sword burning with blood-colored flames around him. And on the flaming enormous sword's sword body, a layer of powerful aura surged. It was precisely the starry sky, sacred flame. Nietion fused the power of the starry sky, sacred flame into the sword's sealing restriction array, and unleashed Devil Sword incinerates the world. Die for me. An icy cold voice sounded out. Nietion slashed out toward the fifth-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist with a sword. The terrifying, flaming, enormous sword set the prairie ablaze in the air, becoming a sea of fire. Want to kill me? Impossible. That assassin's reaction was extremely fast. His body trembled. A layer of jade-green shield appeared around him, like a water curtain, enveloping his entire body, protecting him. Your defense is too weak. Tianling's eyes stared at that layer of water shield, his entire person akin to a killing god. Wielding the sword with both hands, he chopped down with the sword. Immediately, heaven and earth trembled, space trembled. The entire stretch of night sky seemed to be burning. Rumble. The flaming, enormous sword landed. A horrifying muffled sound. The shield on that person's body directly shattered. He actually did not even have time to cry out in time. His figure directly drowned in the flames, dying tragically on the spot. Chapter 11:16. Up in the air, everyone stared at Nietion. Their eyes were filled with disbelief, and the shock in their hearts was all displayed on their faces. One sword, merely just one sword, instantly annihilated a fifth-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist. Was this still a second-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist? The shock in the eyes of countless people gradually turned into fear and panic. The silver-haired martial artist's strength was too strange, exceeding everyone's understanding of martial arts. Come on! Nietion's figure shook as he soared higher into the sky. With a roar, he looked down on all the assassins like a god of death descending to the world. These assassins usually took pleasure in killing. At this moment, when they were targeted by Nietion, they felt like lambs being targeted by a wolf. The feeling of powerlessness instantly made them feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Are you afraid? Nietion wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and laughed wildly. Aren't you assassins? Aren't you going to kill me? I'm standing right here. Do it. His arrogant voice resounded through the void, like a clap of thunder falling in the ears of the assassins. Never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that one day they would shrink back in front of their prey. A bunch of trash. He's igniting his blood energy. He won't be able to hold on for much longer. Attack! At this moment, Yunxie's voice rang out once again. With a stomp of his foot, he stood opposite of Nietion, his cold eyes flashing with a vicious light. Are we going to do it ourselves? Nietion stared at Yunxie as he spoke in a cold tone. There was no fear in his eyes. Instead, they were even more wild and terrifying. Nietion, even if you can kill one or two people by burning your blood chi, so what? Let's see how long you can last. Yunxie's eyes flickered with a sinister light. Of course, he could tell that the reason why Nietion was so powerful was because he had ignited his blood chi. It's enough to kill you. The corner of Nietion's mouth twitched. Without hesitation, he thrust his sword forward. Now that the other assassins were intimidated by him and did not dare to make a move, it was the best time to kill Yunxie. As long as he could kill Yunxie, the other assassins would definitely scatter. At the very least, the taboo is to weep blood and sever the soul. Nietion didn't hesitate in the slightest as his entire body surged with an even more terrifying blood energy. It was actually a forbidden move. Yunxie was a 6th-level Heavenly Emperor. Ordinary sword moves did not pose any threat to him at all. Tian had to go all out. Blood chi permeated the air and merged with the sword will, stirring up a terrifying bloody aura. Kill! As Tian's cold voice rang out, he slashed out with his sword. The blood-red sword image was like a dragon, surging out, causing the surrounding space to tremble violently. The power of heaven and earth was forcefully changed as the space groaned. A mere second-level heavenly emperor and also wants to kill me. Facing Tian's taboo sword, Yun Xie actually had a look of disdain, completely disregarding it. Instead of dodging, a black spear appeared in his hand. It was his original spirit, Annihilation Evil Cloud. Dot! Yun Xie stabbed with his spear. A ripping sound rang out in space, and an extremely tiny spatial rift actually appeared. Following that, a massive black spear image appeared, drawing out a black trajectory in the air, akin to a black dragon, rolling and roaring. Amen. When Tian saw Yun Xie attack, his gaze could not help turning intent. The other party's strength was actually even more horrifying than he expected. Under one spear, it could actually tear apart space. Yun Xie's strength was extremely terrifying. Rumble. The next instant, the sword image and spear image collided in the void, erupting with a terrifying loud bang. Space trembled fiercely, as if there was a sudden clap of thunder exploding out of thin air. Swish, swish, swish. Two surges of power collided with each other. Ear-piercing sounds echoed out as if it was going to tear heaven and earth apart. This person is so terrifying. To actually dare clash head-on with Hall Master Yun. When the Azura assassin saw this scene, he was simply dumbfounded, not daring to believe his eyes. A second-level Heavenly Emperor clashing with a sixth-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist. This was undoubtedly seeking death. Bang! Right at this time, an explosive sound echoed out. The blood-colored sword image was still a little lacking, having the upper hand occupied by the black sword image, directly crushing it to pieces. Tian's gaze trembled slightly. The pair of wings behind him shook, and the black spear image whizzed past close to his chest, leaving behind a bloody wound that was deep enough to see bones on his chest. Blood immediately gushed out in torrents, gushing out like a fountain. So close. The 9 dragon veins within Tian's body started revolving frenziedly. The wound on his chest healed rapidly. This was the terrifying aspect of the 9-star dragon vein. As long as it was not a fatal wound, it could heal instantly. A 6th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist is seriously too strong. Tian looked at the Yun Xie opposite, his gaze involuntarily trembling a little. His strength was still too weak. Even if he used taboo, at the very least, he still could not contend with Yun Xie. Fortunately, he had the holographic divine vestige and the meteor wings. His reaction speed was fast, and so was his speed. Otherwise, if he were struck head-on by that spear image just now, even if he did not die, he would be severely injured. Amen. Yun Xie wounded Tian with one spear. What flashed in his eyes was not elation, but surprise and astonishment. He did not expect that Tian could actually survive under his annihilation evil cloud. A spear attack, at full power, actually failed to kill a 2nd-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist. This was simply a humiliation to him. Tian, your strength has indeed exceeded my expectations. The next instant, Yun Xie immediately recovered his calm and said in a cold voice, "But that's all. The next spear, you'll die without a doubt." The voice that was as cold as iron fell. The killing intent in Yun Xie's eyes was thick to the extreme. If he could not kill Tian with the next spear, he, this 6th-level Heavenly Emperor Realm Hall Master, would be too useless. Is that so? The corners of Tian's mouth twitched, appearing extremely mocking. You've already ignited your vital energy. If you continue holding on, even if I don't make a move, you'll also die from exhausting your vital energy. Yun Xie detected the contempt in Tian's eyes and could not help becoming even more enraged. He said in a cold voice, "I want to see what other means you still have down there." Tianling looked at Yun Xie coldly, an indifferent smile hanging at the corners of his mouth, his expression hair-raising. Although his face was calm, he was calculating extremely quickly in his heart. Even the taboo move could not kill Yunxia. Then even if Nietian used Morningstar Daybreak at this time, it would also be of no use. What was even more troublesome was that Yunxia's annihilation evil cloud long spear was very strange. It would not give Nietian the chance to get close at all. Hence, absolute tremor was also unable to be unleashed. The only plan now is only to use the power of the dragon ring. The corners of Nietian's mouth curled up slightly, a sinister smile appearing. He still had the dragon ring that he had not used for a very long time already. Presumably, the green dragon had already grown to a very horrifying extent and was sufficient to deal with Yunxia. The moment the thought came up to hear, Nietian no longer hesitated. The spirit dragon's sovereign ring on his hand flickered with a green light. Following that, torrential dragon energy rolled out, directly opening up a space. Following that, an entirely jade-green, divine dragon manifested. Roar! The instant the jade-green divine dragon appeared, it reared its head back and roared angrily, tearing apart the silence of the night sky. This is... Everyone felt the majestic dragon might that was like the sea, their faces immediately turning sluggish, all petrified, unable to speak. This was a dragon, a true divine dragon, not a phantom, but a complete body of flesh and blood. Every part was lifelike to the extreme. Chapter 11:17. The moment the divine green dragon appeared, everyone was dumbfounded as they stared at the scene before them in disbelief. What appeared before them was a divine dragon. Its body was not big, only about 300 to 400 meters long. However, the terrifying dragon aura it exuded was incomparably shocking. The moment the dragon moved, everyone could feel the yuan meridians in their bodies tremble as if they were facing a huge threat. How was this possible? Yunxia snapped out his daze. He could not believe what he was seeing. He would not have been surprised if Nietian had condensed a dragon silhouette. However, what appeared before him was a solid body of flesh and blood. He could not accept this. Divine dragons were mythological beasts that only existed in the ancient times. Why was Nietian able to summon one of them? Everything was too strange, and Yunxia could not understand it. This is my technique. Nietian leaped into the air and landed on the head of the divine green dragon. His eyes were cold, and his body was filled with a terrifying murderous intent. The corner of Yunxia's mouth twitched. Even though he was shocked by the strength of the jade-green divine dragon, he was still an experienced assassin after all. He quickly calmed down, and the annihilation evil cloud in his hand trembled in the air. A ball of black light appeared, and a terrifying energy surged within it. Nietian, I admit that your strength is astonishing. However, you're very unlucky to have run into me, Yunxia. Under the exterminating evil cloud, you won't stand a chance. Yunxia's expression had regained its icy coldness. His eyes were emotionless and emotionless. He was an assassin, and he lived by killing. Although Nietian was strong, he was not strong enough to make him retreat. Is that so? The corner of Nietian's mouth twitched. His body was filled with a wild fighting spirit. The divine green dragon moved its body, and a domineering dragon aura shook the heavens and the earth. The surrounding space was filled with a suffocating dragon aura. Evil cloud slash. In the next moment, Yunxia didn't waste any more words. With a cold look in his eyes, he thrust his long spear forward, and the cluster of black light shot towards Nietian like an arrow shot from a bow. The black spear released a thick and bloody aura that almost froze the space. At the same time, the other assassins also made their moves. An endless aura pressed down on Nietian and the jade-green divine dragon. In the blink of an eye, the surrounding space was pulled taut by a terrifying force, and a terrifying force rushed over violently. Break! Nietian sensed the endless attacks coming at him, and his eyes turned cold. He roared furiously, and the jade-green dragon's body started to move. Dragon chi blossomed in the air, and a tyrannical aura was released. Rumble! In an instant, The dragon's might shook the heavens, and a giant dragon soared into the sky. Countless attacks in the surroundings were shattered by the dragon's might. There was no way they could resist the power of the divine dragon. The true power of the divine dragon could tear everything apart and destroy everything. Chi, chi, chi. Countless explosions sounded in the void. All the attacks were shattered by the dragon chi before they could even touch the body of the divine dragon. Only Yunxie's nefarious cloud broke through the dragon chi and shot towards the divine jade dragon. At that moment, the divine jade dragon stretched out its front claws and clawed down. The black light seemed to be solid, and it blocked the attack of the dragon. Boom! A loud explosion sounded, and the body of the divine jade dragon froze for a moment. It was unable to break through the black light. Haha! The power of the nefarious cloud slash is not something you can imagine. Die! Yunxie laughed maniacally when he saw this. He stabbed out with his spear again, and an even more terrifying black light whizzed out. A terrifying death aura appeared, and it shrouded the divine jade dragon. Nie Tian's eyes darkened. He did not expect Yunxie to be so strong that he could take on the attack of the divine jade dragon. Although the body of the divine jade dragon was not big, it was made of flesh and blood. It possessed the true strength of a divine dragon, and a single claw was enough to crush a mountain. Power of bloodline. In an instant, Nie Tian realized that Yunxie was someone who possessed the power of bloodline. Moreover, his power of bloodline and original spirit were almost perfectly integrated, and ordinary people would not be able to detect it. Nie Tian, you're not that stupid after all. Unfortunately, it's too late. Yunxie roared, and the nefarious cloud struck down. The black light condensed into a black shadow of the spear. An imposing aura like that of the sea descended upon the divine jade dragon. Roar! The divine jade dragon's body was severely injured, and it roared to the sky. Its mournful cry resounded through the night sky, and it was extremely ear-piercing. Whoosh! In the next moment, the sound of flesh being torn apart could be heard. The divine jade dragon's body had been pierced by Yunxie's spear, and a bloody hole that was more than 10 meters long appeared on its body. Large pieces of flesh were torn off, and blood splattered everywhere. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he controlled the divine jade dragon to retreat a few thousand meters away. The divine jade dragon stood in the void, and it released its dragon energy. The wound on its body healed in the blink of an eye, but its body had also become much smaller. The body of a divine dragon was extremely strong. As long as it was not severely injured, it could recover in an instant. However, the divine jade dragon's body contained the power of the spiritual dragon seal. Recovering its body consumed a lot of dragon energy, and its body also became smaller. Amen. When Yunxie saw this scene, his eyes trembled slightly, and a hint of cold light involuntarily flashed across his eyes. He smiled coldly and said, "Looks like this isn't a real divine dragon, but a dragon body formed by absorbing some kind of energy. It's just that I wonder how many of my spear strikes this divine jade dragon of yours can withstand." A wild and tyrannical voice reverberated in the air. The aura around Yunxie's body skyrocketed once more. A strange black light crept out, and the entire stretch of space became even darker. It was already pitch black. This was his bloodline power, Dark Knight Serene Cloud. The Dark Knight Serene Cloud was not some especially powerful bloodline, but coupled with his Annihilation Nefarious Cloud, Primordial Spirit, it could erupt with horrifying evil power, allowing him to contend with 7th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists. The Dark Knight Serene Cloud was completely released, enveloping the space within 10,000 meters, and actually formed a massive black enchantment, enveloping everyone inside. What's going on here? Why can't I see anything? The Azura assassins felt a stretch of pitch black before their eyes, as if they had fallen into boundless darkness. They immediately became flustered. Nie Tian, my Dark Knight enchantment can shield the 5 senses. Inside the enchantment, you can't see anything, can't hear anything, and can't sense anything. The current you is just a lamb waiting to be slaughtered under my spear. Yunxie's voice sounded out directly in Nietian's mind, appearing demonic and sinister. Very clearly, he wanted to let Nietian deliberately hear his words and crush Nietian's fighting spirit. But sadly, Nietian's disposition was firm and tenacious. He could actually be crushed with a few words. Is it really like this? The corners of Nietian's mouth twitched, revealing a strange smile. The Dark Knight enchantment indeed had the effect of shielding the five senses. If Nietian was an ordinary martial artist, he would lose all senses and also be unable to break the enchantment. But sadly, he was someone who possessed holographic divine runes. Holographic divine runes perceived everything. Using Elder Sword's words, it was a kind of perception of heaven and earth, a pinnacle divine rune that surpassed Great Tao. People who thoroughly comprehended holographic divine runes were able to perceive the entire world and contain the world in their mind and soul. How could such a horrifying divine rune be shielded by a Dark Knight enchantment? Chapter 11:18. Inside the Dark Knight formation, Nietian locked onto all the Azura assassins with his divine sense. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. He had to admit that Yunxie's Dark Knight ward was a great help to Nietian. The Dark Knight formation could not block Nietian's five senses, but it could block the other assassins' senses. At this moment, the ones waiting to be slaughtered were not Nietian, but the Azura assassins. At this thought, Nietian's murderous intent soared, and his eyes flashed with murderous intent. What a troublesome fellow. Are you still going to resist? Yunxie smiled coldly when he sensed Nietian's murderous intent. He had not expected that Nietian would not give up at a time like this. What a troublesome fellow. You should be asking yourself if your subordinates still want to resist. Tianling smiled as his icy voice echoed inside the formation. Yunxie's eyes narrowed when he heard Nietian's voice. He had not transmitted his words to Nietian. How did the latter hear him? Die, all of you! Before Yunxie could react, the wings on Nietian's back flapped, and he stepped on his green dragon. With the support of the meteor wings, the green dragon's speed increased. Kill them for me. Tianling bellowed. The green dragon's claws flashed with a cold light as it swung down at the Azura assassins. Several beams of cold light whistled through the air. Puffed, puffed, puffed. The sound of flesh being sliced was heard as the green dragon tore the Azura assassins into mincemeat. Since they had lost their five senses in the Dark Knight ward, they hadn't sensed Nietian's attack at all. They had only sensed the frigid killing intent the moment the frosty light descended. By then, it was already too late for them to resist. After killing several Azura assassins in an instant, the remaining assassins were still dumbstruck. They had no idea what was going on. Nietian moved like lightning. In a few flashes, he had killed another 7 or 8 Azura assassins. Damn it! It was only at this moment that Yunxie suddenly reacted. After letting out a furious roar, he was reluctant to close the Dark Knight barrier. Instead, his body moved and his spear shot towards Nietian. Nietian stood atop the green dragon, his speed reaching the pinnacle. As soon as he saw Yunxie's spear descend, the green dragon's body flickered as it dashed towards the terrifying black spear. At the same time, Nietian took a step forward and the wings on his back shook. Like a shooting star, he was still in the air, but all the blood and chi in his body shot out. Without any hesitation, he used the final move of the 3 heaven annihilating swords. Blood devours the heavens. As Nietian's blood chi became more and more intense, his sword intent also surged to the extreme. With a thrust of his sword, the blood-colored sword shadow was thousands of meters long. Boom! The strongest sword strike rumbled towards those last 3 Azura assassins. These 3 people all had 5th-level Heavenly Emperor strength, but at this moment, they were standing on the spot motionlessly, not detecting anything at all. Bang! 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 After 3 muffled sounds, The 3/5 level Heavenly Emperor martial artists actually did not even have the chance to let out their final screams, as they were directly sent flying backward, crashing onto the edge of the Dark Knight enchantment, turning into a sea of bloodlight, dying tragically on the spot. Kaboom! And on the other side, a furious spear struck the green dragon, directly piercing through the green dragon's body. Fresh blood spurted out wildly, falling down like blood rain. The dark space was immediately filled with an extremely bloody smell. Die for me. The current Yunxie was already enraged to the extreme. The annihilation evil cloud erupted with terrifying power. The green dragon's body finally could not withstand it and actually directly exploded in the air. Flesh and blood rained down. The scene was so tragic that one could not bear to look at it. But when Tian saw this scene, he smiled faintly. Raising his arm, a ball of green liquid appeared in his palm and surged into the Spirit Dragon Emperor ring. Even if Yunxie destroyed the jade green divine dragon's body, he was unable to destroy the green dragon's liquid. Tian retrieved the green dragon's liquid and let it return to the Spirit Dragon Emperor ring to continue absorbing the Spirit Dragon Seal's power. Before long, it would become a good dragon again. Tian used the Spirit Dragon Emperor ring's power this time. Although he did not kill Yunxie, he killed off the other Azura assassins. It was also considered pretty good. After destroying the green dragon with a single spear strike, Yunxie scanned the area with his divine sense. However, he discovered that everyone around him was already dead. Only Tian was still standing there with a cold, sinister smile on his face, as if he was mocking Yunxie. Suddenly, Yunxie roared in rage, unable to accept the outcome before his eyes. He originally activated the Dark Knight enchantment in order to kill Tian more easily, but he did not expect that it helped Tian instead, allowing him to instantly exterminate all of the Azura assassins. Yunxie could not accept such an outcome. These assassins were the Evil Cloud Hall's most outstanding assassins. In order to kill Tian, they had practically turned out in full force. Yet, this was the outcome that drove Yunxie crazy. Why? Why aren't you affected by the Dark Knight enchantment? This is impossible, impossible. Yunxie was on the brink of insanity. His body trembled and his face contorted in anger. He roared madly like an enraged beast. He had used the Dark Knight enchantment countless times, and even those stronger than him could not break it. How could Tian not be affected by it? He could not understand this, and even more so, he could not accept it. An enchantment formed by the fusion of one's bloodline and original spirit is indeed terrifying. Unfortunately, this kind of enchantment that blocks all 5 senses is useless against me. Tianling replied coldly. The calmness in his eyes was terrifying. He had to thank Yunxie for activating the Dark Knight enchantment, which allowed him to complete the Dark Knight massacre in an instant. Killing so many Shura assassins, all of whom were stronger than him, made Tian feel extremely satisfied. Bastard, I'm going to kill you. By now, Yunxie had completely lost all sense of reason. With a roar, he removed the Dark Knight enchantment, and the annihilation nefarious cloud charged towards Tian. You want to kill me just like that? It won't be that easy. Tian smiled faintly. In his mind, there was a holographic projection of everything within 10,000 meters of him. Yunxie's every move was within his expectations. He even realized that the holographic projection could predict what would happen in the next moment. It seemed to have the ability to predict what would happen in the next moment, allowing Tian to see what would happen in the next moment. If the holographic divine sigil could predict what would happen in the next moment based on what it had captured, then it would be too overpowered. This would allow Tian to react in advance before the enemy even made a move. At that moment, Tian could vaguely feel that the holographic projection sometimes moved faster than the scene in front of him. However, he was not sure if the holographic divine sigil had the ability to predict what would happen. Just like now, before Yunxie even made his move, he could already see the shadow of the spear whistling towards him through the holographic projection, allowing him to react quickly. Yunxie was already enraged. He spared no effort in his spear strike. A huge shadow of the spear surged forward, its aura as vast as the mountains and the seas. Chapter 11:19. How is this possible? Yunxie's gaze trembled violently when his move was avoided by Nietian, his face revealing horror. Nietian's speed was actually so fast, directly avoiding his attack. This was too inconceivable. 6th level Heavenly Emperor strength, still a little lacking if you want to kill me. Nietian raised his brows and smiled, extremely provocative. He had the meteor wings. Although he could not defeat Yunxie, if he wanted to escape, the other party absolutely could not hold him back either. Damn it! Yunxie cursed angrily once more. Dark Knight Qi gushed out from his entire body and actually condensed into a pair of black wings on his back. When fully spread out, it was as large as 100 meters, making his entire person look like some evil black moths. Nietian, I'll see how fast you can be. Yunxie gnashed his teeth hatefully. The Dark Knight wings suddenly shook, and his figure directly charged over towards Nietian. He never thought that the mission this time would actually have such an ending. Evil Cloud Hall was one of the Azura Gate's 4 halls, and he was also the Evil Cloud Hall's hallmaster. Evil Cloud Hall turned out in full force in order to exterminate a 2nd-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist. In the end, they actually suffered heavy casualties, leaving only him alone alive. With such an outcome, even if he killed Nietian at this time, after returning to Azura Gate, he would definitely receive heavy punishment from the sect master. Thinking up to this point, Yunxie's hatred towards Nietian intensified. The fury in his eyes wished to skin the other party alive. In contrast, Nietian had a calm look. He calculated that Long Outyin and Shui Yong should be about the same. He was unable to kill Yunxie, but Long Outyin was completely capable. Evil Cloud, Ghost Slaughter. Yunxie roared deeply, his figure charging down wildly. Annihilating Evil Cloud rumbled down. Horrifying spear shadows were akin to collapsing mountains, pouncing over towards Nietian ferociously. I'm not playing with you anymore. Nietian laughed mockingly. The meteor wings suddenly shook, his figure flying up like a meteor, leaving behind a dazzling starlight trace in the night sky. Boom! The huge shadow of the spear flew past, but it was still a little short. It did not hit Nietian, but the remaining power of the spear affected the latter. Nietian's figure froze. A small wound appeared on his body, but it healed instantly. At this moment, Jiang Yi's essence power was nearly depleted, and he did not have much power of the stars left. The wings of Meteor would not last much longer. It was not wise for him to continue fighting with Yunxie. Nietian didn't hesitate any longer. His figure flashed out and flashed towards the direction of the small courtyard. Tried to escape? Yunxie's cold eyes trembled as he immediately gave chase. Nietian. Just as Nietian arrived outside the small courtyard, Emo Rushi's figure appeared. She had already seen the previous fight, but she couldn't go over, because even if she went over, she wouldn't be able to help Nietian and would instead become a burden. Moreover, she had Cher by her side. She needed someone to protect her. Rushi, where's Shuiyong? Nietian stopped moving and asked in a deep voice. It was impossible for Emo Rushi to block Yunxie. Perhaps Shuiyong, who had broken through to the 5th level of the Heavenly Emperor realm, could block Yunxie for a while. He's still in the room, Emo Rushi said anxiously. Seeing Nietian's pale complexion, a worried look involuntarily appeared on her face. She asked, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Nietian nodded his head solemnly. He muttered, "Shuiyong, that brat. Even eating a spirit pill is so strenuous." Shuiyong had not come out yet. Nietian had no choice but to continue fighting with Yunxie. At this time, Yunxie had already charged over. His entire body emanated the aura of the Dark Knight. His entire person seemed to be standing in a mass of dark clouds, and his surging aura nearly crushed the entire small courtyard. Nietian died for me. Yunxie had just arrived and attacked without any nonsense. The annihilation evil cloud suddenly expanded, and it actually condensed into the giant spirit true body. 1,000-meter-long black spear floated behind him, and the surging aura seemed to be able to tear heaven and earth apart. What a frightening power! Mo Rushi's petite face stiffened when she saw this scene. Her eyes trembled uncontrollably. Rushi, step back and protect Shui. Tian saw that Yun Xie had used the giant spirit true body. He knew that Yun Xie was truly enraged and would not rest until one of them was dead. Tian instructed Mo Rushi as the aura around his body surged. Your essence force is exhausted, and your blood chi is almost exhausted as well. Do you still want to fight me? Yun Xie shouted, his eyes filled with contempt. Of course, he could tell that Tian was already an arrow at the end of its flight. No matter how strange Tian's strength was, it was impossible for him to fight Yun Xie. Oof. Tianling laughed. He did not say a word. His entire body released a scarlet halo that spread out in circles. It was like a blood-red screen, following which a huge figure appeared behind him. It was the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast. At this time, Tian could only use the giant spirit true body to fight Yun Xie. When the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast appeared, heaven and earth trembled. The void was pulled tight by a huge force, and the power of heaven and earth changed. What a frightening essence spirit! Yun Xie's eyes trembled. The annihilation evil cloud behind him could not help but tremble as if it felt a strong threat. Chaos descends. All living beings submit. The 9 Extreme Chaos Beast was a supreme being essence spirit. Even if Tian was not strong enough, the Emperor of Chaos Beast prestige could not be offended. My essence spirit is already a rank 7 essence spirit, but it actually feels threatened by his essence spirit. What rank is his essence spirit? Could it be a rank 9 supreme being? Yun Xie's heart trembled as his eyes flickered. He guessed that Tian's essence spirit was a rank 9 supreme being. However, he could not imagine that the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast was actually a rank 10 supreme being essence spirit. Make your move. Using the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast, Tian's essence force was almost exhausted. His 9 dragon veins were also exhausted. Even his body seemed a little thin. Arrogant, Yun Xie bellowed. Even if Tian's essence spirit was heaven-defying, he was not strong enough. Moreover, his essence force had been exhausted. Yun Xie was naturally not afraid of him. Annihilation evil cloud, annihilation strike. Die. At the thought of this, Yun Xie no longer held back. The aura around his body skyrocketed as a gigantic annihilation nefarious cloud slashed down from the sky. A devastating attack was unleashed, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. A violent power erupted, sweeping across the heavens and earth. Kill! Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. With a roar, the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast rushed into the sky. Like a ball of blazing fire, it rushed towards the huge black spear in the sky. In the void, one spear and one beast, black and red, clashed. The two huge figures got closer and finally collided. Boom! There was a loud sound, like thunder from the 9th heaven. The huge spear shadow bombarded the head of the crimson beast, and an endless amount of power suddenly exploded. Black and red splendors shot out from the void, intertwining with each other, dazzling. Chi, chi, chi. The space was squeezed and distorted by the confrontation between the two forces. An ear-piercing sound rang out, causing one's heart to tremble. Crack, crack, crack. A terrifying force rushed towards the ground. The ground could not withstand the impact of the violent force and was torn apart. The courtyard behind Tian was on the verge of collapse. Chapter 11:20. Seeing this, Tian's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain spreading from the top of his head to the rest of his body. Little Nine! Tian cried out as his blood, chi, started to spread. Suddenly, a terrifying sword intent shot up to the sky and enveloped his body. In the next moment, Tian immediately understood what had happened. His heart was filled with wild joy, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. He took a step forward, and his body rose from the ground. The heaven-slash sword appeared in his hand, and he directly attacked Yun Xie with his sword. Yun Xie was being held back by the nine-pole chaos beast. He did not expect Tian to be able to fight again. What was even stranger was that he suddenly realized that Tian's sword intent had become stronger. It was even more terrifying than before. How is this possible? Yun Xie was stunned. He could not believe what he was seeing. Why did Tian, whose essence force had been depleted, suddenly become stronger? Could it be? The next moment, Yun Xie thought of a possibility. His eyes widened, and his face turned pale. He suddenly realized that Tian's sword Dao realm had increased. There is only one explanation for Tian's sword intent's sudden increase in strength, which was the advancement of his sword Dao. Yun Xie's guess was right. Tian had increased his sword Dao realm from the sword soul realm to the sword soul realm. Tian had been stuck at the peak of the sword soul realm for a long time. He just lacked an opportunity to break through. Now that he was being suppressed by Yun Xie and the nine-pole chaos beast was injured, his blood chi was burning to the extreme. His sword aura was at its peak. This was the opportunity for him to break through. However, Yun Xie was not completely right. Other than his sword Dao realm increase, Tian had also undergone an even more terrifying transformation. He had condensed the soul-devouring sword intent. Soul-devouring sword intent. The moment Tian leaped into the air, the Sword Elder's voice rang out in his mind. Because of his extreme excitement, his voice was extremely high-pitched. The Sword Elder would never have thought that Tian would actually condense the soul-devouring sword essence at this moment. Oh my God! The Sword Elder was so excited that he choked and choked. The shock in his heart was indescribable. When he passed the soul-devouring sword formation to Tian, he faintly felt that the latter would definitely be able to comprehend the soul-devouring sword intent. But he never thought that Tian actually condensed the soul-devouring sword intent in such a short time. The Sword Elder had obtained the soul-devouring sword array for hundreds of thousands of years. Every day, he would comprehend the sword intent within the sword array, but he was still unable to condense the soul-devouring sword intent. However, Tian had only used a few months' time to magically condense the soul-devouring sword intent. How could the Sword Elder not be shocked? How could he not be stunned? This brat is too scary. After the Sword Elder calmed down, his heart trembled as he spoke. Sky-devouring blood. At this moment, Tian released all of his blood chi once again. This was the most powerful move of the taboo move. Blood devours the heavens. The Proud Sword Intent, the Star Soul Sword Intent, the Thunderbolt Sword Intent, and the Soul-Devouring Sword Intent. The four great sword intents fused together. Coupled with the power of the Forbidden Technique, this sword was Tian's strongest move since his rebirth. Boom! In the void, the sword intent condensed in an instant. An enormous sword shadow, like a dragon emerging from the abyss, fiercely pounced forward. Suddenly, the void trembled and the earth trembled. The momentum of the heaven and earth was stretched by the frightening sword intent until it distorted, emitting a dull groan. Yun Xie was still in shock. Just as he was about to react, his eyes met the blood-red sword shadow. He felt his soul tremble violently. His mind actually went into a trance for a moment. The soul-devouring sword intent devoured souls and contained an extremely frightening spiritual attack. Yun Xie was caught off guard. It was difficult for him to withstand the spiritual attack of the soul-devouring sword intent, and he actually went into a trance for a moment. This momentary absent-mindedness would completely ruin his chances of survival. How could Yun Xie have imagined that Tian, who was already an arrow at the end of its flight, will be able to explode forth with such astonishing power in an instant? Don't kill him. Just as Yun Xie's life was hanging by a thread, a mighty voice reverberated through the skies. In the next instant, A powerful palm energy shot towards Yun Xie. Although that person was already attacking with all his might, however, he was still a step too late. The blood-red sword whizzed past. Yun Xie did not even have the chance to let out a final shriek before his body was engulfed by the sword intent. Not a single trace of him remained. Nie Tian stabbed out with his sword. His martial body was already at its limit. His body trembled in midair, and he was on the verge of collapsing. With a thought, the nine-top Chaos Beast returned to the primal Chaos origin coffin. This time, the ninth extreme Chaos Beast was injured. A glaring scar was left on its head and back. It would probably take a long time for it to recover. However, Nie Tian's ninth extreme Chaos Beast was different from other people's. Ordinary martial artists' martial bodies were closely connected to their primordial spirits. If one was injured, both would be injured. However, the connection between Nie Tian and the ninth extreme Chaos Beast was not that close. They were two different bodies. The ninth extreme Chaos Beast even had its own consciousness. Hence, even if the ninth extreme Chaos Beast was injured, the reflection of the injury on Nie Tian's body would not be that obvious. At that moment, Nie Tian's figure stood tall in midair. His entire body was covered in blood, and a bitter smile hung on his face. The fusion of 4 different sword intents, coupled with the forbidden technique, had finally killed Yun Xie. However, right after Yun Xie died, an even stronger opponent appeared. Huang Tianfei, come out. Nie Tian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and called out a familiar name. Nie Tian, I didn't expect that you're actually really alive. As his voice faded, a black-clothed figure arrived in the air, the killing intent all over his body piercing to the extreme. Nie Tian raised his head slightly and looked at the newcomer. The other party's face was hidden in the black robes, but the aura and voice on his body were all familiar to him. Huang Tianfei, I also didn't expect that you're still alive. Looks like I was too confident with that sword back then. I actually didn't kill you, Nie Tian said coolly, the corners of his mouth revealing a trace of a bitter smile. The person in front of him was called Huang Tianfei, the Azura Sect's deputy sect master. Over 100 years ago, Nie Tian had once exchanged blows with Huang Tianfei. The process was very simple. Just one sword, and the latter was directly sent flying. At that time, he thought that Huang Tianfei was already dead. He did not expect that he was actually still alive. It seemed like his strength even increased, and he actually reached 8th level Heavenly Emperor. Nie Tian, looks like this seat didn't make this trip in vain. If I didn't appear today, wouldn't I have let you escape again? Huang Tianfei, said Nie Tian coldly. The enmity of that sword back then, he had always remembered it in his heart. It was just that later, Nie Tian died at Luo Chenhuan's hands, making him have no hope of taking revenge. He only regretted not being able to kill Nie Tian with his own hands. But who could have thought that over 100 years later, Nie Tian reincarnated? Furthermore, his strength was only a mere 2nd level Heavenly Emperor. This was simply a chance for revenge bestowed to him by heaven. The former Heaven Realm's #1 war god, a mission comparable to the 9 emperors, but now he became 2nd level Heavenly Emperor trash. Truly laughable. Huang Tianfei looked askance at Nie Tian and said sinisterly, his eyes flickering with a venomous light. Nie Tian's gaze turned slightly intent. The current him was indeed unable to contend with Huang Tianfei. Chapter 1121. Just as Huang Tianfei was being insolent, Long Outyin suddenly appeared, his entire body releasing a berserk aura, his entire body suffused with wild fighting intent. His entire person was like an unsheathed wild blade, sharp and domineering. Finally came out. When Nie Tian saw that Long Outyin finally appeared, the corners of his mouth curled into a hint of a bitter smile. If the latter still did not come out, he would really be annihilated by Huang Tianfei. Nie Tian's divine sense swept across Long Outyin's body. The latter fused very well with the 8 desolate ghost bone. It seemed like the Yin corpse curse mark in his body had already started to be absorbed by the 8 desolate ghost bone. His entire person looked much sharper and did not have that depressed and aged appearance from before. Nietion reckoned that after the 8 desolate ghost bone thoroughly absorbed the Een corpse curse mark on Long Out Yin's essence meridian, the latter's strength could very easily reach 9th level Heavenly Emperor. 9th level Heavenly Emperor strength was already the Heaven Realm's Divine Realm's pinnacle strength. In the entire Heaven Realm's Divine Realm, those able to reach this strength were only around several hundred people. Of course, there are also differences between 9th level Heavenly Emperors. Extremely few people could reach the true peak Heavenly Emperor like the 9 Emperors. You're Long Out Yin? Huang Tianfei saw an 8th level Heavenly Emperor martial artist suddenly appear. When he saw the other party's face clearly, shock and astonishment appeared in his eyes. He did not expect that the legendary Heaven Realm's #1 madman would actually appear here. Yoho, you still recognize your father? Long Out Yin smiled ostentatiously, incomparably arrogant, completely not taking Huang Tianfei in his eyes. He immediately turned to Nietion and chuckled, saying, "Big brother, you go and rest. Leave this little bastard to me, brother." Nietion nodded slightly, his figure landing. The current him was already depleted of essence energy, blood energy depleted, and stellar power was also exhausted. If he were to fight with Huang Tianfei, that would really be striking a rock with an egg. The outcome would absolutely be too horrible to look at. Nietion, are you all right? Mo Rushi came to Nietion's side and injected a surge of essence energy into Nietion's body. The latter's pale face regained some color. "I'm fine." Nietion smiled faintly. As long as he didn't die, he could quickly recover. Seeing that both Mo Rushi and Cher were fine, Nietion was relieved. This time, it was a blessing in disguise. Not only did his sword soul make another breakthrough, but more importantly, it allowed him to condense the soul-devouring sword intent in a desperate situation. This allowed Nietion's battle prowess to improve by leaps and bounds. Now, every stab of his sword contained an extremely terrifying spiritual attack. This was a very abnormal combat power. In a battle between powerhouses, a split second of distraction could lead to a completely different outcome. Mr. At this time, Shui Yong's figure also appeared, and he was extremely surprised to see Nietion injured. "You're finally fine." Nietion smiled bitterly. Shui Yong, this brat, had to go through so much trouble just to eat his spirit pill. It really made him speechless. But Shui Yong did not disappoint people too much and already successfully broke through to 5th level Heavenly Emperor strength. "Long Out Yin, you'd best not interfere in this matter. You're very clear what kind of person Nietion is. Who made me come to kill him? You're also very clear." So, at this time, Huang Tianfei looked at Long Out Yin and spoke cautiously, seemingly a little afraid of the latter. Long Out Yin was a powerhouse who had already made a name for himself a long time ago. Over 100 years ago, he dared to provoke anyone, arrogant until he even looked down on the Heaven Realm's 9 emperors. Huang Tianfei did not know what happened to Long Out Yin, so he was very wary of the latter. "Your mother's egg, I know." Long Out Yin did not give Huang Tianfei a chance to finish speaking at all and directly roared angrily. "Nietion is my big brother. You want to kill him and still don't let me interfere. Was your brain kicked by Luo Chenhun or squeezed by a Jura Gate Lord? Long Out Yin you." Huang Tianfei was angered until his face turned purple by Long Out Yin's one sentence. He did not expect that the latter was so arrogant, not even showing respect to Heavenly Emperor Daynite and Azura Gate Lord. "What about you? Your father will give you 2 choices. The first is to scram yourself, and the second is for me to make you scram. Which do you choose?" Long Out Yin laughed wildly, as if Huang Tianfei was simply a nobody in his eyes. One had to know, Huang Tianfei was Azura Gate's deputy sect lord. Furthermore, his strength reached 8th level Heavenly Emperor, the same cultivation as Long Out Yin. As expected, he's still the #1 madman. When Nietion saw how overbearing Long Out Yin was, he could not help but shake his head. Although over 100 years had passed, the latter's character did not change at all. He was still boundlessly arrogant. Shuiyong was dumbfounded watching by the side. He did not expect that his teacher could actually be arrogant to such an extent. Long Outyin, you're too arrogant. Huang Tianfei was unable to restrain his anger. Even if Long Outyin was a famous powerhouse, he could not be so condescending. Your father has been insolent before. Long Outyin smiled cold. His arrogant attitude was arrogant to the extreme, making people wish that they could go forward and tear him apart. Unforgivable. Huang Tianfei was thoroughly enraged and could no longer control himself. With a furious roar, the aura around his body suddenly soared. A humanoid phantom appeared behind him. It was as large as 100 meters and directly slapped down with a palm. The aura that suddenly erupted was like Mount Tai crushing down, vast and mighty. Teacher, watch out. Shuiyong couldn't help but cry out in shock when he saw this scene, and his face turned ghastly pale. Nietian had an indifferent expression instead. If Long Outyin, who possessed the octogenarian ghost bone, was unable to even resist this palm strike, then he would really be trash to his grandmother. That's something that's only a 3-year-old kid. Watch out my ass. Sure enough, Long Outyin roared madly with laughter, and he didn't even spare it a glance before he directly smashed out with his fist. It was the octogenarian ghost bone. Bang! Instantly, evil and violent octogenarian ghost energy effused out like tempestuous waves, and it condensed into an enormous black-colored fist in midair before it rumbled down towards Huang Tianfei. Rumble! At the instant the fist and palm collided, an explosion erupted in midair, and then the palm suddenly stopped moving. It was unable to endure the all-powerful force of the octogenarian ghost energy, and it directly shattered into pieces. In the next moment, a miserable shrill cry resounded while Huang Tianfei's figure was blasted flying, and he drew out a bloody trail in midair. One punch, merely just one punch, Long Outyin instantly defeated Huang Tianfei. When Yetian and the rest saw this scene, they involuntarily sucked in a cold breath, their faces turning stiff. Yetian knew that Huang Tianfei was not Long Outyin's match, but he did not expect that he was defeated so cleanly, so thoroughly. It seemed like Long Outyin and the octogenarian ghost bone fused very well, exceeding Yetian's expectations. According to this degree, Long Outyin should be able to break through to the 9th level Heavenly Emperor realm very soon. But at this time, Long Outyin gave a cry of surprise and frowned slightly. Turning his head to look at Nietian, he said with an unhappy look, "Big brother, this octogenarian ghost bone of yours wouldn't be a fake, right? Even 4 great, profound arms. Why is it that one punch can't even kill a cripple?" Long Outyin did not manage to insta-kill Huang Tianfei with one punch and seemed to be very unhappy. Nietian had black lines on his face and immediately had an impulse to kick Long Outyin. This guy was a classic case of flaunting his innocence after getting an advantage. Although Long Outyin's punch earlier was not able to kill Huang Tianfei, it severely injured the latter. At this time, even if Huang Tianfei was lent 10,000 gallbladders, he absolutely would not dare to appear again. Chapter 1122. In the main hall of the small courtyard, Nietian and the rest took their seats one after another. After experiencing a fierce battle just now, Nietian was already exhausted. Only now did his complexion improve. "Big brother, are you all right?" Long Outyin's current state was very good, feeling his whole body bursting with strength. He saw Nietian's worried look and could not help saying, "Big brother, don't worry, I'll definitely protect you guys. Forget about some Azura assassin coming. Even if Azura Sect Sovereign and Luo Chenhun come personally, I'll make them never return." The corner of Nietian's mouth twitched, and he could not help shaking his head with a bitter smile. Long Outyin was good in all aspects, just that he was too arrogant, always bursting with self-confidence. Although his current strength was already very strong, if he encountered a peak powerhouse like Azura Sect Sovereign or Luo Chenhun, he would not have the strength to fight at all. To put it bluntly, It was difficult for Long Out-Yin to want to defeat ordinary 9th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists now. But to be able to see Long Out-Yin regain his confidence, Nie Tian was still very happy. Out-Yin, I have a favor to ask of you. At this time, Nie Tian's eyes suddenly became solemn, seemingly already thinking for a long time. Big brother, say it. Even if you want my head, I'll immediately cut it off and give it to you. Long Out-Yin said casually. Although it was a joke, it revealed extreme sincerity. Nie Tian sighed lightly, then glanced at Mo Rushi and Cher and said, Out-Yin, I want you to send the two of them to Divine Cold Hall and hand them over to Mao Xianglong. Divine Cold Hall. When Long Out-Yin heard this place, his gaze involuntarily darkened, and he said, Big brother wants Mao Xianglong to protect them. Nie Tian nodded solemnly, his expression somewhat solemn. With his current strength, he really had no way to protect Mo Rushi and Cher. If he let Mo Rushi and Cher stay in Divine Cold Hall, he could guarantee their safety. Frost Emperor Mao Xianglong was a peak expert and had the ability to protect anyone. Nie Tian speculated that even if the person who left the mark of a saint on Mo Rushi knew that she was in the Divine Cold Palace, he would not dare to go and capture her. Because if he did that, his identity would be exposed, and he might not be able to take Mao Xianglong away from him. Cold Emperor is Tan San Er's lover. Since she's Big Brother's woman, I'm sure she won't refuse. Long Out-Yin nodded and said seriously. Boring 3 was the nickname that Long Out-Yin gave to Nie Tian's third disciple, Chengju. This was because Chengju was very low-key and didn't usually speak much. As for Long Out-Yin referring to Mo Rushi and Cher as his women, he naturally wouldn't mind it. Long Out-Yin was just like that, always speaking carelessly. Mo Rushi and Shui looked at Nie Tian and didn't say anything, but their eyes were filled with sparkling light. Big brother, what about you? Long Out-Yin suddenly sensed something and asked in surprise. I'm going to the mysterious Yellow Mountain Range to look for something. Nie Tian nodded solemnly. He didn't plan to go to the Divine Cold Palace with Long Out-Yin, but decided to split up. No matter what, Nie Tian had to go to the mysterious Yellow Mountain Range to look for the 3 Lives Grass. Moreover, he knew that the people sent by the Azura's Gate would be stronger than the current ones. Even if he stayed by Long Out-Yin's side, he wouldn't be of much help. Instead, he might become a burden. With Long Out-Yin's current strength, as long as the person who attacked wasn't the Azura's Gate Patriarch or Luo Chenhun, he had the ability to protect Mo Rushi and Cher. Moreover, if the person who attacked saw that Nie Tian wasn't around, they might not make a move on Long Out-Yin. Nie Tian, are you leaving us? Cher looked at Nie Tian, unable to stop the tears in her eyes from flowing down her cheeks. Cher, I will come find you. Nie Tian said solemnly. He had no other choice but to make such a decision. Cher, don't cry. I will be with you. Mo Rushi's heart was filled with sadness, but she still pretended to be strong and comforted Cher. Watching this scene, Long Out-Yin grinned mischievously, saying, Sisters-in-law, rest assured, even if Long Out-Yin has to risk his old life, he will definitely ensure your safety. Thank you, little uncle. Mo Rushi squeezed out a smile, expressing her gratitude. But you look so scary, Cher whispered as she looked at Long Out-Yin. Nie Tian chuckled, saying, Cher, don't worry. Although he looks a little fierce, he is definitely a good person. He will definitely protect you. Oh, Cher nodded lightly, holding Mo Rushi's hand tightly. Long Out-Yin laughed, saying, Big brother, what do you mean by look a little fierce? I look extremely fierce. Nie Tian's face darkened. This guy was so proud of his fierce looks. Out-Yin, there's no time to lose. Leave immediately. Nie Tian knew that once Huang Tianfei returned to the Azura's Gate, he would spread the news, and at that time, even more powerful assassins would come to kill them. If Nie Tian had an 8th Order space-time scroll, he could directly send Mo Rushi and the others to the Divine Cold Temple, and things would be much simpler. However, even in the Heaven World's God domain, an 8th Order space-time scroll was extremely rare. The Heaven World's God domain was an upper plane. The spatial stability was very high. Only rank 8 and above space-time scrolls could achieve space-time transfer. Unfortunately, Niet Tion did not have a rank 8 space-time scroll in his hands. Long Ao Yin immediately stood up, his expression somewhat nervous. He naturally understood Mo Rushi and Cher's importance to Niet Tion. Hence, even if he lost his life, he must ensure the two girls' safety. Mo Rushi and Cher slowly stood up, finally preparing to leave. After a moment, everyone arrived outside the small courtyard. Stinking brat, you must protect Big Brother well. Understand? Long Ao Yin made Shui Yong stay by Niet Tion's side to protect the latter's safety. Although Shui Yong was not considered a top powerhouse, he also had 5th level Heavenly Emperor strength, considered a pretty good guard. Teacher, rest assured, I'll definitely protect Mr. Nie well. Shui Yong nodded heavily. For him to be able to break through to 5th level Heavenly Emperor realm, it was still all thanks to Niet Tion's 7 Revolutions Dragonheart pill. Coupled with that, he already knew Niet Tion's identity. He would naturally do his best to protect. Big Brother, I need roughly 2 days to go to the Divine Cold Hall. As long as I send the 2 sisters-in-law to Cold Emperor's hands, I'll go to Heavenly Desolate, Unnaging to look for you. Long Ao Yin looked at Niet Tion and still said worriedly. Now that Niet Tion's identity was already exposed, Azura's Gate's people would charge over in an endless stream. He was in danger at any time. I'm fine. I'll leave the 2 of them to you. Niet Tion nodded solemnly and said once more. Big Brother, rest assured. Long Ao Yin, can be beheaded, but nothing must happen to the 2 sisters-in-law. Long Ao Yin laughed and did not stay any longer, turning around and leaving. Mo Rushi and Cher took one last look at Niet Tion and left with Long Ao Yin. Chapter 11:23. Niet Tion stood outside the small courtyard until the figures of Mo Rushi and the others completely disappeared. Then he returned to the courtyard. Mister, are we going to the mysterious Yellow Mountain Range now? I heard that something big happened there recently. Shui Yong, who was following behind Niet Tion, suddenly said. Niet Tion's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he immediately smiled and said, What happened? I'm not too sure. But it seems that someone found an earth vein with extremely rich heaven and earth spiritual energy there. It seems that the legendary heaven and earth spiritual pool has appeared there, Shui Yong said with a frown, his eyes revealing an unconcealable passion. Heaven and earth spiritual pool. Hearing these words, Niet Tion's eyes couldn't help but tremble violently, and his expression became slightly sluggish. Of course, he knew what the heaven and earth spiritual pool was. It was a legendary pool formed by the purest heaven and earth spiritual energy. Rumor had it that cultivating in the heaven and earth spiritual pool could not only break through the limit of a martial artist's martial body's ability to absorb heaven and earth spiritual energy, it could even improve a martial artist's martial body. If a martial artist with a heaven and earth spiritual body entered the heaven and earth spiritual pool, their heaven and earth spiritual body could achieve a breakthrough. There is even a rumor that a martial artist who died not long ago could be resurrected on the spot after being placed in the heaven and earth spiritual pool. Of course, these were just rumors. What the real heaven and earth spiritual pool looked like, no one knew. In the past, there is often news of the discovery of the heaven and earth spiritual pool in the celestial realm. However, it was later confirmed that it was just an earth vein with slightly richer heaven and earth spiritual energy. Heaven and earth spiritual energy was originally an extremely pure energy. It was almost impossible to liquefy it. It could only be achieved in a special environment. Niet Tion had specially studied the heaven and earth spiritual pool before. In the end, he came to the conclusion that it was impossible for a heaven and earth spiritual pool to appear in the celestial realm because the space was not stable enough. Even if the heaven and earth spiritual energy was rich enough, it could not liquefy. That kind of extremely compressed energy would cause the space to become unstable. It was easy to create spatial cracks and absorb the liquefied heaven and earth spiritual energy into them. Sigh. Niet Tion couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Although he didn't believe that the heaven and earth spiritual pool had appeared, others definitely believed it. Therefore, many people would enter the heaven and earth spiritual mountain. Hopefully, this won't cause me any trouble in finding the 3 lives grass, Nietian thought to himself. Shuiyong, I'm going to rest for a day. After that, we'll go to the mysterious Yellow Mountain Range. Nietian said to Shuiyong and walked into his room. Shuiyong nodded in agreement. He knew that Nietian needed to recover his strength, so he waited outside the room. Mo Rushi and the others had already left for the Divine Cold Palace, so the people chasing after them would not come here. Instead, they would look for Mo Rushi and the others. By the time Luo Chenhun reacted, Nietian had already left Liangwu City. After entering the room, Nietian thoroughly examined his body. There were no major problems. The wounds on his body had already healed, but his essence power and blood chi had yet to recover. Nietian entered the primal chaos original coffin. The 9-top chaos beast's injuries were not light. There was a frightening scar from its head to its shoulder. Master, Brother Jio's injuries are very serious. I'm afraid he will need a few months to recover. You won't be able to use your giant spirit true body for these few months. The corpse Luo Demon Lord sighed and said. Actually, he was very curious. Why didn't the 9-top chaos beast's injuries appear on Nietian's body? It was as if Nietian and the 9-top chaos beast were 2 completely independent entities. Yeah. At this moment, little Jio had already become very small, just like when it was born. Its scarlet body seemed to be surging with flames. It called out to Nietian twice, as if it had smelled something good. Nietian smiled faintly. Of course, he knew what little Jio wanted. So, he took out a 7-turn dragon heart pill and threw it over. Little Jiu leaped up lightly and caught it with its little claws. Without hesitation, it swallowed it. Following that, its 2 big round eyes suddenly flashed as it looked at Nietian again. You're really greedy. Nietian had a speechless look, but he still took out another 7-turn dragon heart pill and threw it over. Little Jiu caught it and swallowed it directly. Then it actually burped as if it was already full. Its body curled up and it lay on the ground and slept soundly. The 7-turn dragon heart pill was a tier 9 spirit pill. Even the 9-top chaos beast could not eat too much. With the medicinal effects of 2 7-turn dragon heart pills, little Jio should be able to recover in a month's time. Nietian smiled faintly. After confirming that the 9-top chaos beast was fine, he left the primal chaos original coffin. I should also eat a dragon heart pill. Another 7-turn dragon heart pill appeared in Nietian's hand. He raised his head and swallowed it. Not only could the 7-turn dragon heart pill allow him to recover quickly, but it could also increase his strength to at least reach peak 2nd level Heavenly Emperor. But wanting to break through to 3rd level Heavenly Emperor was still not too possible. The reason why Shuiyong could borrow the 7-turn dragon heart pill to break through to 5th level Heavenly Emperor was that he himself had already stopped at 4th level Heavenly Emperor for as long as 30 years, while Nietian had just broken through to 2nd level Heavenly Emperor. They could not be mentioned in the same breath. The instant the dragon heart pill entered the body, Nietian felt a violent force impact open up in his body and actually could not resist crying out in shock. Only at this time did he know that the dragon heart pill's medicinal effects were even more horrifying than he imagined. No wonder Shuiyong took such a long time to digest the dragon heart pill. One day later, Nietian walked out of the room, his entire person glowing with health and vigor, completely without the paleness from before. At this time, his strength reached peak 2nd level Heavenly Emperor. Essence energy, blood energy, stellar power, mental strength were all in their optimal state. His entire person was like an unsheathed sharp sword, revealing its edge. Mr. Yu, when Shuiyong saw Nietian's aura, he could not help being stunned and could not speak for a long time. Last night, he clearly sensed that Nietian expended too much blood energy, his martial body extremely weak. Even a 5th level Heavenly Emperor's strength also needed at least 10 days before he could completely recover. Now just a day passed, and Nietian fully recovered. This was also too strange. How could Shui Yong know that Nie Tian had the chaos origin coffin? One day was 10 days to him. Coupled with the dragon vein and stellar origin stone in his body, he could naturally recover completely. Nie Tian ignored Shui Yong's surprise and said with a faint smile, Shui Yong, let's go to Liangwu City and see if there's anyone going to the profound Yellow Mountain Range. Hitch a ride. Before long, Nie Tian and Shui Yong appeared at the Zhu family's mercenary field and ran into Li Quan once more. Mr. Nie, you're going to the profound Yellow Mountain Range too? Li Quan looked at Nie Tian and exclaimed with a look of surprise. He did not expect that after not seeing for a day, Nie Tian's aura seemed to have strengthened again. Nie Tian was still a first-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist a few days ago, but now he was already peak second-level Heavenly Emperor. This kind of improvement speed was too terrifying. Furthermore, he was also very surprised that Nie Tian actually wanted to go to the profound Yellow Mountain Range too. But thinking about it, he also understood. The legendary Heaven-Earth Spirit Pool appeared in the profound Illusion Mountain Range. Nie Tian naturally had to go and join the fun. Thinking up to here, Li Quan laughed and said, our family's eldest miss also wants to go to the profound Yellow Mountain Range. Just nice, we can go together. Chapter 1124. Hearing that Zhu Lian and the others were also going to the Xianhuang Mountain Range, Nie Tian immediately thought that they were going for the Heaven and Earth Spirit Pool. Elderly, will Miss Zhu Lian bring Zhu with her? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he asked. Yes, Li Quan nodded. Ms. Zhu Lian believes that as long as we can find the Heaven and Earth Spirit Pool and let the second miss bathe in it, it might be able to cure her meridians. Nie Tian was not surprised by Li Quan's words. He had already guessed this. Zhu Lian wanted to use the Heaven and Earth Spirit Pool to cure Zhu Ru'er's martial meridian body. It was a good idea, but it was too childish. Let's not talk about whether the Heaven and Earth Spirit Pool had the power to cure a martial meridian body. Even if it did, the existence of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Pool was another matter. Taking a step back, if the Heaven and Earth Spirit Pool really did exist, it would attract countless experts. Could the Zhu family be strong enough to monopolize the Heaven and Earth Spirit Pool? Nie Tian understood this, but he did not say it out loud. Instead, he asked Li Quan, Elderly, when do you plan to leave? My master and son-in-law have already left. Miss Zhu body isn't too good right now, so we've been delayed. But we'll be leaving soon. Li Quan nodded, as if he was very confident in snatching the Heaven and Earth Spirit Pool. Nie Tian looked at Li Quan and couldn't help but frown. He thought to himself, maybe the Zhu family really has some amazing power behind them. The appearance of a Heaven and Earth Spirit Pool in the Xianhuang Mountain Range would definitely shock the entire Dongchuan Divine Realm. Any power with a little bit of power would covet the Heaven and Earth Spirit Pool. After all, it was a treasure that only existed in legends. After a short while, Li Quan brought Nie Tian and Shui Yong to the mercenary hall. A huge ironback dragonhawk was hovering in the sky. Dozens of martial artists were standing there, and Zhu Lian was standing in the middle of them all. Beside Zhu Lian was an exquisite mobile room. Needless to say, inside the room was her sister, Zhu Rua. Li Quan walked over and said to Zhu Lian, Eldest miss, Mr. Nie also wants to go to the Xianhuang Mountain Range and wants to travel with us. Zhu Lian glanced at Nie Tian. His eyes were cold and even contained a trace of killing intent. After thinking for a moment, he coldly said, Nie Tian, if you want to go with us to the mysterious Yellow Mountain Range, you must have an identity. How about you become a guard of my Zhu clan? Eldest miss, you've gone too far. My family's mister is only taking the ironback dragonhawk along the way. Why do you have to make him your Zhu family's bodyguard? Without waiting for Nie Tian to speak, Shui Yong stepped forward and spoke with an angry expression. Shui Yong knew Nie Tian's identity, so how could he casually become someone else's guard? Li Quan was stunned. He did not expect Shui Yong to stand up for Nie Tian. In his impression, Shui Yong had always been the kind of person who would not retaliate or speak up unless the person being scolded was his teacher. Did this brat take the wrong medicine? Eldest miss is talking about Nie Tian, not his teacher? Li Quan looked at Shui Yong with a puzzled expression and said in his heart, Looking at Shui Yong's reaction, it seemed that Nie Tian's status was already equal to his teacher's. Who do you think you are? Julian frowned and looked at Shui Yong coldly. I heard that you were hired by Nie Tian yesterday. Don't you know who your master is? You are a mercenary of the Zhu clan. Before the contract expires, I am your master. You're just a dog. How dare you bark in front of your master? I'll dismiss you. Shui Yong's face turned red from Zhu Lian's words. He was so angry that he cannot speak. Although he had a mercenary contract with the Zhu clan, he was a warrior. He was absolutely not someone's dog. At this time, Nie Tian's face suddenly became gloomy. He had already sensed the killing intent in Zhu Lian's eyes, but he did not know where it came from. Miss Zhu Yong's eyes flashed with coldness. He stared at Zhu Lian and said coldly, Miss Zhu, there are some things that can be said and some things that can't be said. If you apologize to my friend now, I will pretend that I didn't say what you just said. Nie Tian had interacted with Zhu Lian before. He knew that she was a cold and emotionless person. Apart from being nice to her sister, she was not polite to others. Moreover, this woman changed her attitude very quickly. If you were useful to her, she would respect you. If you were useless, she would kick you away. Nie Tian did not want to have too much contact with this kind of person. However, since it was convenient, he thought that they would go to the Xianhuang mountain range together. After arriving there, she would look for her heaven and earth spiritual pool, and he would look for his 3 lives grass. Who knew that Zhu Lian would be so heartless? She actually asked him to be her guard for free and even insulted Shui Yong. He could not accept this. Apologize? Zhu Lian glanced at Nie Tian as if she had heard a joke. She laughed coldly and said, Who do you think you are? You are just an ant from the Sumeru world. You are not worthy of me apologizing. Nie Tian's face suddenly darkened. He did not expect Zhu Lian to be so arrogant. Mr. Nie, our first miss said something wrong. This old man apologizes on her behalf. Please forgive her. Li Quan said nervously as he sensed Nie Tian suddenly releasing an ice-cold killing intent. Unfortunately, it was too late. Nie Tian suddenly took a step forward. His whole body's aura exploded and enveloped Zhu Lian. He had tolerated this woman for a long time. If he did not teach her a lesson, she would really think that he was a pushover. Zhu Lian felt a huge sword intent enveloping her. It was as if there was an invisible giant hand pressing down on her. She actually felt a strong sense of suffocation. Her chest suddenly heaved up and down violently. Her pretty face turned red. Nie Tian, you dare to make a move against me? Zhu Lian forcefully endured a breath and made a sound with difficulty. She actually discovered that under Nie Tian's pressure, she could not even release her sword intent. Just a few days ago, Nie Tian was still a first-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist with the same strength as her. Now, he could actually crush her just by relying on aura pressure. This made her unable to understand. First miss. When the surrounding several dozen martial artists saw Zhu Lian being controlled by Nie Tian, they immediately became nervous and shouted in unison. Their faces were at daggers drawn, wanting to make a move. I'll see who dares to move. At this time, Shui Yong roared. His entire body's aura burst out. It was as if an invisible mountain appeared, turning into an invisible giant force that spread out. Everyone actually could not withstand this force and retreated one after another. These people were all high-level mercenaries of the mercenary field. They were familiar with Shui Yong and naturally knew Shui Yong's prowess. But they sensed at this time that Shui Yong's strength was much stronger than before, simply having a qualitative leap. He could already rely on aura to suppress them. Shui Yong, he broke through to 5th-level Heavenly Emperor. Suddenly, someone reacted and cried out. When the others heard this person's words, their pupils suddenly constricted, their eyes filled with shock. Chapter 1125. Li Quan noticed that Shui Yong's strength had increased. He was stunned for a moment before he understood what was going on. He looked at Nie Tian. Nie Tian was an 8th-stage alchemist. It must be thanks to him that Shui Yong was able to break through. No wonder Shui Yong was so respectful to him. The mercenaries of the Zhu family were shocked by Shui Yong's roar. They all looked afraid and didn't dare to take another step forward. Lord Nie Tian, My first miss is still young, and her words were thoughtless. Please forgive her. Li Quan's face was pale with fright, and he hurriedly apologized to Nietian. Nietian's face was cold. He stared at Zhu Love and said, I'll say it again. Apologize. Nietian didn't want to hurt anyone, especially a woman who was weaker than him. But if Zhu Love insisted, he didn't mind making her suffer. Nietian, this is Marshal Liang City. If you dare to harm even a hair on my head, I guarantee that both you and your dog will die here. Zhu Love's beautiful face was flushed red. She refused to let go of Nietian and continued to threaten him. Nietian's expression darkened slightly as killing intent flashed across his eyes. Mr. Nye. It was at this moment that a weak voice sounded out from a nearby room. Zhu walked out, her face as pale as snow. Her skin was translucent, as if it would shatter upon contact. Mr. Nye, I apologize on behalf of my sister. Please don't hurt her. Zhu Ruo spoke with difficulty. Her face was pale and delicate under the breeze. Nietian's eyes narrowed. He thought for a moment and then let go of Zhu Love. Zhu Love, for Miss Ruo's sake, I'll let you go this time. But I warn you, there won't be a second time. Remember, no one is your dog. Nietian didn't want to get angry, but Zhu Love kept insulting him, calling him a dog and an ant. It was intolerable. The pressure on Zhu Lian's body was released, and her complexion was much better. However, her eyes were still filled with panic. She had not expected Nietian's strength to be so tyrannical. Shuiyong, let's go. After what had happened, Nietian and Shuiyong could no longer travel with the Zhu family. They planned to leave Liangwu City and think of another way. Nietian. Just as Nietian and Shuiyong were about to leave, Zhu Yin suddenly called out, Miss Zhu, what else do you want? Nietian stopped, not looking back. For the sake of Zhu Ruo's plea, he had already let go of Zhu Yin. Was Zhu Ruo still going to be so stubborn? Nietian, if you dare to hurt me, my fiancée will definitely not let you off. Zhu Yin said coldly, her eyes flashing with intense killing intent. Fiancé? Nietian was slightly stunned. He suddenly remembered that Li Quan had said that the Zhu family's patriarch and son-in-law had already gone to the Yellow Mountain Range. He guessed that the son-in-law Li Quan mentioned was Zhu Lian's fiancé. Zhu Lian had a very high temperament, and the Zhu family was very powerful. To be able to become the Zhu family's son-in-law, he must not be an ordinary person. However, even if this person was a genius from the heaven realm, Nietian was not afraid. Tell him to come and find me. I will wait for him. Yeah, Tianling responded coldly, and once again stepped forward, preparing to leave. Nietian. At this time, Zhu Yin's voice sounded again, revealing a touch of coldness. His name is Lin. Linny. Hearing this name, Nietian's body froze, and his face immediately sank. He had never thought that Zhu Yin's fiancée would be Lin Yi. Although he already knew that Zhu Yin and the rest seemed to have seen Lin Yi previously, he did not think that the two people would actually have this kind of relationship. It seemed like after Lin Yi came to the Heaven Realm's divine realm, he flourished, becoming the Zhu family's son-in-law so quickly. At this time, Nietian finally understood why Zhu Yin would reveal killing intent after seeing him. It turned out that it was because of Lin Yi. Zhu Yin must have told Lin Yi about him meeting Nietian, and the latter determined Nietian's identity and told Zhu Yin. Hence, Zhu Yin had such strong hostility towards Nietian. Understanding all this, Nietian calmed down instead. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly, and he said in his heart, in this case, Lin Yi already knows that I came to the Heaven Realm's divine realm. Furthermore, he knows that I'm in Marshal Liang City. He actually didn't come to find me. Interesting. Lin Yi's severed arm should have long recovered. Furthermore, he came to the Heaven Realm's divine realm earlier than Nietian. Hence, his current strength was at least second-level Heavenly Emperor. The reason why he didn't find Nietian might be that he felt that he didn't have absolute confidence in defeating Nietian. He didn't want to borrow the Zhu family strength. He just wanted to defeat Nietian personally. Eldest Miss Zhu, you don't understand what kind of person Lin Yi is. I advise you to stay away from him. Otherwise, you'll regret it. Tian slowly turned around and said to Julien, Lin, he was the kind of person who would do anything to achieve his goals. He was willing to be the Zhu family's son-in-law because he took a fancy to the Zhu family's power. And when his strength rose to a certain level and he no longer needed the Zhu family, he would absolutely dump the Zhu family without hesitation. Back then, in order to survive, he even used Lin Feng's life to threaten Tian. One had to know that Lin Feng was his biological younger brother. A person who could even sacrifice his biological younger brother. Would he still care about a Zhu family that basically had nothing to do with him? You're afraid? Julien smiled cold. She clearly misunderstood Tian's meaning. She said, in the Shumi world, you weren't a match for my husband. Now that you're in the celestial realm, you still won't be a match for him. Hearing Julien's words, Tian frowned. He just smiled and didn't say anything. Even though Lin Yi was very strong, he would definitely lose in a direct confrontation with Tian. It could even be said that Lin Yi was driven to the celestial realm by Tian. As for what Lin Yi wanted to say, that was up to him. I've already told you what I want to say. As for whether you want to listen or not, that's up to you. Tian smiled indifferently. He didn't stay any longer and prepared to leave. At that moment, another ironback dragonhawk appeared in the sky. Its gigantic body was even more terrifying than the Zhu family's ironback dragonhawk. Roar! When the ironback dragonhawk appeared, a monstrous pressure spread through the atmosphere. The Zhu family's ironback dragonhawk sensed that it was in danger. It wailed, flapped its wings, and flew away. Ironback draconic eagles. The Zhu family members cried out in alarm when they saw this. That ironback dragonhawk was supposed to carry them to the Xianhuang mountain range, but it had been scared away by another ironback dragonhawk. Little Iron, shouted Julien. She wanted to call the ironback dragonhawk back, but it flew further and further away. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared. The members of the Zhu family were stunned. They didn't know what to do. The Zhu family didn't have many ironback dragonhawks. That was the last one, and it had been scared away. How were they supposed to go to the Xianhuang mountain range? Chapter 11:26. Julien was furious. The Zhu family members also became cautious, looking at the ironback dragonhawk in midair. Sir, this ironback dragonhawk is so big. Shuiyong stood behind Tian and said softly with a look of surprise. Tian looked at that ironback dragonhawk and nodded, his brows involuntarily furrowing. The ironback dragonhawk was a rank 7 spirit beast. Ordinary ones were 500 to 600 meters in size, but this one in front of him exceeded 1,000 meters. Furthermore, its pair of eagle eyes were very sharp, flickering with a cold and poisonous light. It did not seem to be reared, but like wild. Tian knew that wild ironback dragonhawks were even bigger and extremely aggressive. Although their offensive power was not strong, they were very hard to tame. For the people on the dragonhawk to be able to tame wild dragonhawks, it indicated that there was a high-level beast tamer existence among them. Tian spread out his divine sense and sensed a bit, his brows involuntarily furrowing. There were not many people on the dragonhawk, only a dozen over. But each and every one of their auras was powerful, all third-level Heavenly Emperor and above strength. Furthermore, there was even a 4th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist and a 5th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist among them. When Julien's furious voice fell, no one on the ironback dragonhawk responded for a long time. Bastard, are you all cowards? Don't dare to show your heads. Julien was even more furious, her brows knitting tightly, her exquisite pretty face trembling as she roared angrily again. Yo-ho! This time, someone finally responded, but it was an extremely disdainful voice, saying, Liang Wuqing's Zhu family's eldest miss, what a temper. The extremely mocking voice fell. Following that, a figure appeared. It was a handsome youth dressed in white, looking only 25 or 26 years old. His aura was retracted, but it still gave people a huge pressure. 4th-level Heavenly Emperor. Tian looked at that handsome youth who was somewhat devilishly handsome, his gaze involuntarily trembling. the shock in his heart not small. This person's age was not old. To have such strength, he was definitely a famous genius in the heaven realm's divine realm. He is. Sure enough, when the crowd saw that youth in white, they exclaimed one after another, their eyes all becoming dazed. Godslayer young master. When Julienne saw that person's face clearly, her beautiful eyes trembled violently, and she cried out a name, her entire expression instantly turning stiff. She did not expect the person to be one of the 4 great young masters of the East River Divine Realm, the Godslayer young master. In the younger generation of the East River Celestial Realm, there were 4 extremely talented martial artists. They were known as the 4 Young Masters, and the God-slaying young master was one of them. Rumor had it that Child Godslayer was cruel and bloodthirsty. He would kill anyone he didn't like. What was even more terrifying was that the Godslayer young master was a member of the Heaven Murder sect, one of the 4 major sects of the Dongchuan Divine Realm. Hence, very few people dared to offend him. Liang Wuqing's Zhu clan was considered a powerful second-rate force in the East River Divine Realm. However, the Heaven Murder sect was one of the top first-rate forces. The Zhu clan couldn't compare at all. Julienne's face paled as she recalled how she had told Child Godslayer to get off the stage. The Godslayer young master was a bloodthirsty and ruthless individual. He did not put the Zhu clan in his eyes at all. If Julienne offended him, only death awaited her. After the other members of the Zhu clan found out about the other's identity, their chi immediately dispersed. Each of them became as quiet as a sheep, not daring to make a sound. They were afraid of attracting the Godslayer young master's attention and being killed for no reason. This Godslayer young master has such a strong chi. Nietian looked at the Godslayer young master, his eyes flashing as he thought to himself. He could feel that the Godslayer young master's chi was very heavy. This was the chi formed from killing people for a long time. Needless to say, this person was a bloodthirsty and ruthless individual. The Godslayer young master stood on the back of the ironback dragon eagle. His gloomy eyes swept through the crowd like a hawk. Those who met his eyes all lowered their heads, not daring to look at him. However, there was only one silver-haired warrior who looked straight at young Master Godslayer. He didn't try to escape. There was no fear in his eyes, only calmness. The Godslayer young master's eyes narrowed and his mouth twitched. He sensed that Nietian was a second-level heavenly emperor, so he didn't take it to heart. Instead, he locked his eyes on Julienne and said in a cold voice, "Young lady of the Zhu clan, you really have a bad temper. Your Zhu clan's ironback dragon eagle is useless, scared away by this young master's dragon eagle. Can you blame this young master for that? You actually dared to tell this young master to roll down. Now that this young master has rolled down, what are you going to do?" The deep voice carried an extremely playful tone, and at the same time revealed extreme arrogance, causing people to shudder. "Godslayer young master, Julienne's face was as white as paper. Her chest was heaving up and down. Her forehead was covered in sweat, and even her back was drenched in cold sweat. Li Quan was so scared that his legs were trembling. How did he offend this Godslayer young master? Young lady of the Zhu clan, this young master is not an unreasonable person. I'll give you a choice. Destroy your own Yuan Ling Yuan Meridian and kowtow to me 100 times. Then I'll spare your life. How about it?" The Godslayer young master's face was cold, and a strange smile hung on the corner of his mouth. He spoke in a low voice, carrying a strong pressure. "Godslayer young master is too generous. Young lady of the Zhu clan is really lucky to be forgiven by Godslayer young master. Her ancestors must be burning incense." The moment the Godslayer young master's words fell, a burst of laughter came from behind him. It had to be said that the Godslayer young master was really magnanimous this time. If it was any other time, he would not only kill Julienne, but also all the members of the Zhu clan below. This was the Godslayer young master's personality. He wanted to kill, and kill for fun. Even if Julienne was a rare beauty, he would still kill her without hesitation. The reason why he spared her life today was because the Godslayer young master was happy. He wanted to go to the Xianhuang mountain range to find the heaven and earth spirit pool, and he was determined to get it. When the members of the Jew clan heard the Godslayer young master's request, they were stunned. Countless eyes focused on Zhu Lian, waiting for her reaction. Zhu Lian stood rooted to the ground, dumbstruck. Her entire body was sluggish, unable to react for a long time. The Godslayer young master was just as the rumors said, cruel and bloodthirsty. At that moment, Zhu Lian turned to look at Nietian. The look in her eyes wasn't one of distress, but one of extreme viciousness. Like a madman, she pointed at Nietian and shouted, "It's all your fault. You made me offend young Master Godslayer." Nietian was taken aback, and his face instantly darkened. With Zhu Lian's personality, even if Nietian hadn't angered her, she would still have gone crazy if she had seen her iron-backed draconic eagle run away. She would have offended the Godslayer young master just the same. "Sister," Zhu was suddenly shouted, her face filled with pain. "It has nothing to do with Mr. Nye." Zhu Lian was stunned. She turned to look at Zhu Ruo, and the anger in her eyes turned to despair. "Young lady of the Jew clan, I don't have the time to watch you act. Hurry up and make your decision." The Godslayer young master looked at Zhu Lian cold.